Hello, 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 and welcome to Alexasrewm, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, we are not law enforcement, we are just people. People who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including what the heck is going on with the Ashley Benefield case. Now, if you are new to this case, just a quick synopsis. Ashley Benefield is the former Florida ballerina who is charged with second-degree murder for fatally ending her late husband, Douglas Benefield's life via a GUN back in 2020. So this case has been dragging on for about 4 years. That's twice as long as our friends in Norfolk County regarding the Karen Reed case. And things got really spicy this week. Now, we're a little bit behind, a couple of days behind. Yesterday, I posted a video going over opening statements, what the state believes what happens in their case that they are going to try and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Ashley actually intended to end Doug's life, whereas the defense is claiming she did it out of self-defense after years of suffering DV. On day one, we heard from Tommie Benefield. We also heard from Eva Benefield. So Eva Benefield is the daughter who was about 15 at that time that this just awful tragedy took place. She took the stand, and there was some interesting news that actually kicked off today's trial. So we're actually on day 3 in real time, but we're backtracking to day 1 just to give everything a separate day because I think it's really important to break down this testimony and give it its own day because a lot came out on day 1, just foundational stuff that's important to understand the series of events. We'll go through the crime scene tech testimony as well too. I think there was also maybe a detective or two that had testified as well too. Then tomorrow we'll go on to day 2, do a recap of that because a lot came out in yesterday's testimony, specifically in regards to Douglas Benefield's family court attorney, who was essentially his divorce lawyer slash child custody lawyer as well too. So there's a lot to unpack there, which is why I want to separate everything kind of day by day, do my best to recap as well too. But before we get into today's testimony, which kicked off with Tommie Benefield, the cousin and allegedly close friend of Doug Benefield, the victim, I want to say thank you so much for the donations that came in over the last 2 days. I meant to actually read this off in yesterday's video, the first donation that this channel has ever received, as well as yesterday's donation that came in through CashApp. So I would just want to take a couple of minutes to read those out, shout those folks out. And if you want to make a donation as well too, and you want to have your name and message shouted out as well too, I have a couple of links that a couple of ways that you can make a donation or contribution to this channel. You can just click any one of the links in the description box below or give a super thanks as well too. That should be right below the video as well. But I wanted to just quickly say thank you to our very first donor, Venus1572, for the $10 super thanks. Thank you so much. You guys literally I broke out into tears when I saw that. You have no idea how much that means to me. Just being able to create content that just really gets me going, that really means something to me. As much as I enjoy my day job, this is the stuff that I live and breathe, just news stories and stories of real people, real victims. That just means it's just such important work, in my opinion, and these stories need to be shared more and more into as many people as possible. And the fact that there's this amazing community that is willing to contribute to the growth of this channel is just absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, Venus1572, for being the very first donor of this channel, for your $10 super thanks. It means more than you know. And then secondly, I wanted to read this Cash App that we got yesterday from Kim Farnham, who says, really enjoying your videos. Thank you so much, Kim Farnham, for that like ridiculously generous $25 donation. Thank you. Again, you guys are bringing me to tears. Like, I'm probably going to cry again. So thank you so much for believing in me, my work. And with that being said, let's dive into today's testimony. So we're going to start with Tommie Benefield, the cousin of Douglas Benefield. He is about, I think, about 5 or 6 years Doug's senior. So I think he was in his 60s already when Doug was in his late 50s. I think he was about 58 when this tragic event occurred. So we're going to hear from him first. And a lot came out in his testimony that kind of sheds a different light into whether or not he should be counted as a credible witness or not, or if he's kind of showing his bias. I'm probably going to skip a little bit ahead just to get past his background, but he was in the Navy. He testifies essentially that he was the one who kind of encouraged Douglas to get into the Navy as well too. Both know how to fly aircrafts as well. So interesting background for sure.
Stayed with me in the months prior to him going into the Navy. He went through aviation officer candidate school, went through flight school, and then flew for 3 years and 2 deployments off aircraft carriers like I did. Same aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, as a matter of fact.
Okay. How old was Doug Benefield when he died?
All right. He was 5 years younger than me. I'm 68 now. That was 4 years ago, 64. He was 59, I believe.
About how tall was Doug?
5'9", 5'10" at the most.
Approximately how much did he weigh at the time?
My guess is 160, 165. He was slender and fairly small for a man.
Okay.
So they're trying to paint him out to be small in stature. And if we look back to that photo that the defense opened up their opening statement with about, what Doug looked like, I feel like that was a really good way to kind of preface things. And obviously Tommie Benefield wasn't privileged to see the opening statements because he is actually, I don't know. He might have been in the room when they showed him, when they were showing. Does anybody know if Tommie Benefield was sitting in the witness stand during that? I'd be curious to know if anybody caught him in the gallery, if he was allowed to be present for opening statements. But if you recall, the defense did show a picture of what Doug Benefield looked like. He looked like he was in shape. Yeah, sure, he might have been considered on the maybe slightly shorter side for a man, but I feel like 5'10" is pretty average for most men. Even if he was 172, I mean, we saw he was very much in shape, looked like he worked out quite a bit. Definitely a lot larger, even if he was slender by male standards, right? He wasn't a huge bodybuilder or meathead or anything by any means. He was no Brian Higgins for sure. But he was definitely a lot bigger than Ashley. I mean, I can't imagine Ashley was any bigger than maybe 100, 105 pounds. I don't know how tall she is, if any of you guys know, but she seems very, very small compared to him, no matter how you want to slice it.
And before Doug moved to Florida, where did he live?
Before he moved
down here to Bradenton, Florida, where did he live?
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to pick a year at that point. I'm sorry. He had a home all the way up until his death in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, just north of Charleston. 701 Preservation Place was the address.
Okay. And he lived at that address before moving to Bradenton, Florida, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And then he rented the house out when he moved to Bradenton for visitation of their daughter.
Okay. And before he met Ashley, who did he live with at the house?
The house for multiple years was Doug, his longtime wife Renee, and their daughter Eva. That's prior to Renee's death in 2015, December 2015.
Okay. So Renee died in 2015. Do you know how she died?
Yes, ma'am. She died of a undiagnosed heart ailment, cardiac arrest.
Okay.
Which is interesting because that was something that piqued the interest of Ashley Benefield when she was accusing Doug Benefield, which we will learn, or I think we heard a little bit about it during opening statements yesterday, but in yesterday's video, but that was one of the reasons Ashley, we'll come to find out Ashley actually text Doug, "Hey, how did your last wife died?" Because she believed that Doug was poisoning her through her tea. So interesting to keep note of. We don't know. I don't think we know what happened with the first wife. It seemed like things just they got married young. One can only speculate if he went into the Navy. They probably got married before he went off to the Navy and then came back, got divorced. He met Renee. They also had a very similar dynamic to him and Ashley in regards to the allegations that Ashley will make later that we will discuss. And then she passed away from a cardiac arrest caused by what? I don't know. I don't know if we we have any documentation that goes into the coroner's report of what may have caused the cardiac arrest. I don't know. But she passed away 9 months before Ashley and Doug met.
Is
Lack of qualifications?
Yes.
Overruled on that basis.
was Renee Eva Benefield's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you say that date again? It was 2015 that she died?
I believe it's December 2nd, but I may have the day off, but not the month of 2015.
2015. All right. And I want to ask you now, switch to Ashley. So about how long after Renee died did Doug meet Ashley?
9 months.
When did you first meet Ashley?
I met Ashley in the spring of 2017. I believe the date was either March 14th or April 14th.
And did you know about Ashley before you met her?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How did your meeting come about?
I was flying for Southwest Airlines as captain at the time. They changed my schedule like they do many times in the airline world. And I ended up not overnighting in Baltimore, Maryland, and they sent me to Charleston, South Carolina. Because I was going to Charleston, I texted Doug and said, hey, I'll be in to Charleston tonight. I'd like to have dinner. And he said, great. Text.
Okay. During your conversations, did he mention the name Ashley?
In the second text chain, which is entered.
Sustained.
I'm asking because
I can answer the question, ma'am. When I arrived in Charleston, I texted Doug, and his text to me specifically was,
you can't speak about what Doug said to you,
okay,
but during the text messages,
Is that
did he
fair to
indicate to
say?
you there was a female involved?
yes, that's the first mention of Ashley to me, that we were not going to have dinner at the airport, and that I was to take Uber up to Mount Pleasant to meet them.
Okay. And was that at their house?
That was at Doug's house. Yes, ma'am. 701 Preservation Place.
Doug's house at the time.
So again, just to further paint the picture, Doug had not told anybody about Ashley, not even his own daughter, and apparently his cousin, who he's super close with. He just casually mentions her, according to Tommie. Hey, actually, can you come by my place because Ashley isn't feeling well? And Tommie's like, who the heck is Ashley? But okay, I'm assuming that's probably a girlfriend or something to that effect.
And how long were you with them, the two of them together?
4 to 5 hours. We started at the house. We ended up going back to my hotel, getting a piece of medical technology, medical device that I was a master trainer in that device. We had dinner together at a pizza restaurant across from the hotel, and then went back to my room in the hotel, the three of us, and certainly 4 to 5 hours that day.
And during this time, did you have multiple conversations with both of them?
We had conversations about everything, especially about how they met,
Okay.
starting at the house, ending at the hotel.
And what did Ashley say about how they met?
She talked about how they met at a political event, a meeting, where Doug and his.
So I am curious because I missed this the first time too, is what medical device did you retrieve? Now we find out, and I didn't know this, that Ashley suffers from fibromyalgia, and I've only heard from other people just how awful that pain is. So I wonder if the medical device that he just mentioned has to do with whatever kind of pain she was in, because at this point she's not pregnant. They had just gotten together. They had just gotten married. So I'm wondering what kind of pain or sickness, what wasn't making her feel well, or was there something else? Did something happen before between Doug and Ashley? Again, I'm just speculating here, but I'm asking probably a lot of the same questions that the jurors might be asking themselves as well too. Why did you have to feel the need to retrieve some sort of medical device that you're expertly trained in? I feel like they just kind of glazed over that, and I'm like, wait, like, huh? And let's just rewind that for a second too.
4 to 5 hours. We started at the house. We ended up going back to my hotel, getting a piece of medical technology, medical device that I was a master trainer in that device. We had dinner together at a pizza restaurant across from the hotel, and then went back.
I was a master trainer in. So again, it's like, was it for you? Was it for Doug? Was it for Ashley? Ashley was the one who wasn't allegedly feeling well. So, I mean, what piece of medical technology are you referring to, sir?
Back to my room in the hotel, the three of us, and certainly 4 to 5 hours that day.
And during this time, did you have multiple conversations with both of them?
We had conversations about everything, especially about how they met,
Okay.
starting at the house, ending at the hotel.
And what did Ashley say about how they met?
She talked about how they met at a political event, a meeting, where Doug and his business investors were.
Personal knowledge. Defendant statement.
Yeah, overruled.
You go ahead.
Both Ashley and Doug told me about how they met the first night at a political meeting, how Ashley had reached out to him before that meeting. They showed me text messages between them for the 10 days between the first meeting and her second meeting with him up in Charleston, Mount Pleasant. They talked about.
So, it's, if I'm gathering this correctly, it seems like Doug and Ashley met at the Trump political meeting or the donors. I don't know exactly what kind of event it was, but somewhere where Ashley was essentially working for Trump's team, I think during one of his presidential election campaigns, and Doug Benefield was also there. That's when they first met. And I think he called her like Ashley Oakley and being well versed in firearms. Allegedly, this is the conversations that had went down prior to them after them meeting. So it seems like they met again at a different political meeting. But notice how they say the word political meeting, because if you missed my last video, I don't know if this was probably done in some kind of pre-trial hearing or during some set of discovery where the judge was saying what the prosecution can enter into evidence and what the defense can or cannot enter into evidence. And I'm assuming that the mentioning of Trump, that nobody can say it was a Trump political meeting. And again, we're in Florida, we're in a red state, so there's likely a lot of the members of the jury. It's easy for one to speculate that they're likely a Trump supporter. Maybe not. I don't know if them mentioning Trump would play for more for the state or more for the defense, make Ashley seem a little bit not more sympathetic, but more like, oh, like she's pro-Trump. I don't know. That's just my speculation brain. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Why they decided to omit that from testimony. If you feel like it helps if it would help the defense or if it would help the state. I don't really know. I feel like it could go either way.
How they had mutual interest, mutual alignment, how they were looking for the same thing in a relationship. They talked about, Ashley talked specifically about her fibromyalgia and pain associated with her ballet dancing days. Ashley talked about her mother, her upbringing, about her father, about the separation there.
Okay.
Do you have an objection?
Yes, sir.
On the basis?
Yes, sir.
It's
It's my understanding this is the defendant's statement.
Yes.
Or overruled.
Okay. Let me stop you there. So she said that her and Doug met at a political event.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at the time that you were meeting with them, were they married?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ashley indicate to you when they got married or how long they had been married?
Yes, ma'am. 13 days from first meeting.
That they got married 13 days after they met?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ashley indicate where they got married?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that?
That was in Mount Pleasant or Charleston. Doug's best friend at the time, Tripp, married them.
Okay. Did Ashley ever discuss with you that she carried a gun?
Yes.
And what did she say about that?
She said that on their initial meeting, in the political meeting, that she and Doug's traveling partner in business went outside of Secret Service people, and she showed him the gun she was carrying at that event in her bra.
Okay. And she talked to you about this during your meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to jump forward a little bit.
I don't know what the point was to say of where the GUN was. Like the fact that it was in her bra, like it just, like, oh, it's so scandalous. She put it in her bra. I don't know. Like, I just feel like, okay, like why did we need to say that? But okay, cool.
Did you have any conversations that
Probably
night
where I would
about
put it
them
if I
wanting to have
didn't
a
have
child?
a big enough
Or was that a
purse.
different time?
I don't remember us talking about it that first night. No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember a conversation with Doug and Ashley, specifically Ashley, about them wanting a child?
I believe it was later in the late spring, the next time that I visited with them.
Okay. And to your knowledge, could Doug have children?
He had a vasectomy after having his daughter with Renee, his longtime wife.
Did Ashley?
I'm sorry, so no, he
Okay.
couldn't have children.
Did Ashley speak about that in front of you, Ashley and Doug together, or Ashley separate about the vasectomy?
They did when they were discussing having Doug have a vasectomy reversal. Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did that reversal ultimately go through?
Yes, ma'am, and I believe Ashley actually paid for it on a credit card. They talked about that.
Okay. And ultimately, she became pregnant.
Yes, 3 months after the vasectomy reversal, she became pregnant. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did they end up?
So Ashley, and this is where a lot of people are like, Ashley manipulated Doug into getting a vasectomy, and like I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't there when they had that conversation. That's a pretty invasive procedure, one to have done and then to reverse it. I can only imagine what that can, one, do to your body, and two, just do mentally to you. So who knows how Doug's behavior may have been after following this procedure. And was it something that Doug really wanted, or is it something that he just did because he loved Ashley and he wanted to give her what she wanted, which seems to be a baby? So I don't know, but I mean, the fact that she was the one to pay with her credit card, it seems like this was more of something that she wanted. Maybe Doug didn't want. I mean, you have to think about, again, the age difference that Doug is about 58, 59 years old. He's probably at a point in his life where he doesn't want any more children, but Ashley's only 24, 25, so she's just becoming old enough to be like, "Yeah, I'm now that we're married, like, for me, the next step feels like having a baby." At the end of the day, Doug did make the choice to go through with it. I feel he's a grown man, like, if he didn't want to get it done, he could have put his foot down and said no, so it seems like at some point it became a mutual decision. But whether or not she manipulated him into doing it, I don't know. I don't know. What say you?
I'm going to skip a little bit forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Did they end up having a wedding reception?
They did. I believe it was June of 2017. I was single parenting at the time, and I wasn't able to attend, but it was in Charleston, South Carolina, at the home of one of Doug's business partners.
Okay. You mentioned something about ballet dancing, so I'm going to ask you about that. In your meetings and discussions with Ashley, did she indicate she was interested in the ballet?
She spoke about the fact that she had been a ballet dancer, that she had performed in, I'll call them shows, back, I believe, in Maryland, where she grew up. And by the time that I first met Ashley, they had formed the ballet company called the American National Ballet in Charleston. And they were, at the time that I first met her, they were working on getting that ballet company up and running.
Okay. And was this going to be a large endeavor?
Several $1 million, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Up to 40 dancers were hired. Yes, ma'am, large endeavor.
Okay. And do you know what Doug's role was in that? In your discussions with Ashley, did you find out what Doug's role was?
Doug and Ashley talked about it on the first night I met her, about how they founded the ballet, how Doug did the online limited liability corporation work, founded the name, resurrected that name, how they worked together to try to build a ballet that was diverse and open to more than one body size, body shape, body color. That was the philosophy of the ballet as they explained it. That was Ashley's dream.
I mean, that does sound like a really cool, and remember too, Ashley was a former ballerina who didn't really ever it didn't really ever take off in the way that she wanted to, because I think she said something to the effect of she was too tall, or she wasn't small enough to be a professional ballerina, so she wanted to open up this opportunity to other dancers of all shapes, sizes, and it really does sound like an amazing idea, and it's upsetting to see that something like this wasn't able to be seen fully through. I think it would have been a really, really great way to shake up that industry.
And how was it funded?
It was funded several ways. A number of Doug's business partner friends and Doug himself invested money. They had a major, let's say, arts benefactor in Charleston, is a personal injury lawyer who was going to be the primary major donor. In Doug's case, Doug was working on very advanced technologies and patents at the time. And in his case, he didn't have any savings or cash in the bank. So he sold his future stock grants and options to other investors to put his own money in, about $100,000 in his case.
So Doug didn't have any money. That's what he's saying. Doug had no money. So anybody who, look, there's been a lot of different conflicting views on this. Was Ashley a gold digger who was just in it for the money? And maybe she was. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm trying to look at it both ways. Maybe she was. Maybe she saw Doug at this, political meeting. I mean, it's like, how do you even get in a room like that if you don't have some sort of cash flow behind you, or you don't have or if you don't have like the certain network or connections? So she might be looking at him and saying, wow, like you seem to be a pretty powerful man. Maybe he appeared to have a lot of money. I mean, that's the way it sounds, even when Eva Benefield takes a stand too. I know she said this in her TikTok. She calls herself, I was spoiled. My dad always took care of everything, etc. I never had to pay for anything, which isn't a bad thing. If you can do it and you can raise your kids like that, I say, why not give them everything that you didn't have? Why not? That's why we work hard, right? But it seems like he didn't actually have his own money. He had other people's money to invest in this company, invest in Ashley's dream, and maybe Ashley didn't know that. You know, or maybe she wasn't in it for the money. Again, looking at the other side. Maybe Ashley didn't know it. Maybe she wasn't in it for the money. But she seemed to have this dream, and Doug swoops in, wanting to be, you know, the hero, her knight in shining armor, and say, yeah, baby, I want to give you everything. I want to make your dreams come true. And he knows how. It seems like he knows how. He's very good at getting other people to give him money, getting other people to invest in things, in his ideas. And this does seem like an amazing idea. Don't get me wrong. But he didn't have any savings, nothing in the bank. He sold his stocks so he could put his own money, a little bit of his own money into it, which is interesting. So the gold digger theory, that's kind of out. But whether or not Ashley knew he had money or not is a different story. Did she know this when she was going into marrying him?
So while this ballet was in development or launching, did Ashley ultimately become pregnant? I know you said she became pregnant several months later, but I'm just trying to get a timeline.
Yes, ma'am. So in February of 2017 are the records and what they told me about founding it. I met her in maybe a month or two after that on that Charleston overnight. They held the first ballet event, and I was invited in May of 2017. Once again, single parent, I wasn't able to attend. She got pregnant in July, and we talked about that multiple times. And the next month in August was the large launch, which me, my business partners, my veteran friends, supporters of Doug all went to Charleston for that major launch in August. It was at a place, I'm sorry.
And at that time, was Ashley pregnant in August?
She was pregnant. I don't remember if she knew or not. It was
okay.
1 month after the pregnancy was Emerson was conceived.
And at some point, did Ashley move away from the South Carolina home?
Yes, ma'am. We had the August ballet big launch. 2 weeks later, Doug moved Ashley down to Ashley's mother's home in Lakewood Ranch. Drove down one day, dropped her off, and drove back the next day. That's late August.
And what was the understanding? What was Ashley's understanding of why she was moving and what was going on?
In text conversations and personal conversations with Ashley.
Defendant statement.
It's going to be the defendant's statements.
Can we approach her? Yes.
So they're going to approach. But yeah, what do you think about, again, do you think Ashley knew that Doug didn't have money? Do you think that she later found out and was like, why are you lying to me? Do you think Doug was hiding the fact that he didn't have money? Or do you think she genuinely believed he did have some kind of money and she was in it for the money? Let me know in the comment section below. But it definitely seems like there was a little bit of deception on somebody's end. For sure. Okay, so we're back.
That was the initial indication. Yes, ma'am.
And her mother could better take care of her.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Ooh. Yeah, I want to go back.
Yes, ma'am.
I hate to use.
Yes, ma'am.
So in your discussion, we were talking about the reason that Ashley went to Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
So in your discussions with Ashley, either text or in person or on the telephone, did she indicate to you that she was going to Florida because she was sick? And
that was the initial indication. Yes, ma'am.
And her mother could better take care of her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
This is going to be really important, guys, too, when we go through day 2's testimony, because Alicia Byers, Ashley Benefield's mother, takes the stand. And the state calls Ashley Benefield's mother as a witness, which is bizarre and all in its own right. But I digress. And just to kind of preface things a little bit, he's saying that Ashley told Tommie the reason why she was going down to Florida was because she was sick. Now, this is after she's pregnant with Doug's child. She goes down to Florida to live with her mom. She says it's because she's sick. She's moving down there. What Alicia Byers later testifies is slightly different from what Tommie Benefield is testifying to. Who is right? Who is wrong? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think his testimony so far is credible?
Throughout the time that you saw Doug and Ashley together, how did Doug act?
In particular on the opening night and all the way through their relationship. Opening night, totally in love. Both of them in love with each other. Doug was always very respectful. He was very, very respectful with her in front of me, both that initial night and then the next weekend, I believe in May, that I spent down in Sarasota, Bradenton with them. Every time he was respectful of her. They were in love. They never showed anything in front of me other than caring for each other.
That was going to be my next question. So did you see anything other than that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross.
So again, he testifies that he never saw anything other than them just being in love and completely lovey-dovey, head over heels for each other. But now again, we get into Cross. Cross gets a little bit spicy. Things start to come out, questioning his bias, questioning his credibility. We will get into this now.
Mr. Taylor, as I said before, you're free to use the podium if you prefer to cross from table. Yes, sir. Morning, Mr. Benefield.
Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
You were a naval pilot, correct?
Navy pilot, yes, sir.
And I think you mentioned the training that you had briefly, correct?
I went through extensive training all my 30-year career, yes, sir.
Okay. Some of that training included close quarters combat, did it not?
No, sir, never.
No hand-to-hand
No,
training at all?
No, sir.
Do you remember having a conversation where you related information about close quarters combat?
Yes, sir. I was in charge. I was the senior.
Do you remember that conversation
Which one, sir? I don't know which one
about
you're
close
speaking about.
quarters combat?
If it was in perspective of me running security and self-defense training for my airline, not the Navy.
You received no such training in the Navy.
No, sir, never.
Did Doug admit to you firing the gun in the kitchen of their home?
Yes.
So already they're approaching because the state is like, we are not getting into that. What are you about to ask, Mr. Taylor? And you can see it's a big shift. I think the prosecution in terms of pacing did a really good job on this witness, getting what they needed, I guess, to support their own theory. But I don't really know what Tommie Benefield really added other than their relationship seemed great from an outside perspective. I guess that could be useful in pinpointing that, making Ashley look like the aggressor in the situation, the one who was controlling everything, how manipulative she would have been, I guess, in a way that supports it. So what Mr. Taylor here is getting at, the defense attorney for Ashley Benefield, is close quarters fighting. Because remember, going back to his opening statements, when he was saying, yeah, he was trained to disarm folks who may have a weapon on them if he was ever caught in a situation where he didn't have a weapon on him as well. How can you defend himself? So did he ever have a conversation about having that kind of training? What level of knowledge or experience did he have? So that seems pretty relevant to where it seems like the defense's theory is going. And I kind of liked how he just jumped right into it. It kind of cut through all the rest of the background stuff that I feel like just isn't necessarily important to repeat. So he's getting right to the chase. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit past. Is he sleeping here? Oh, he's stretching his neck. Okay, they're back. They are back from.
Mr. Benefield, do you recall that Ashley had left your cousin Doug in the fall of 2017,
Yes, sir.
specifically September 18th of 2017?
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that date and the events.
Do you recall writing to Ashley Benefield in a text in May of 2018, I'm a fan of yours?
Here's a
It's his.
So they go back to sidebar. So this is where things get interesting. There's a lot of objections throughout his entire testimony during cross, because why are you texting your cousin who you're apparently so close with, the wife, soon to be ex-wife? Like, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. I guess you don't believe in the bro code, but also too, it could be seen as, and as Mr. Taylor will call it during his arguments over this, is that feel a little gross and scheming, like, and slimy. Like, one, why are you crossing that boundary? I don't know any of my exes whose family members I stay in touch with. Do you guys? I don't. and say that I'm a fan of yours. That's just a little bizarre behavior, especially because you're even older than your cousin. Again, if it's consensual and if Ashley is, is flirting back, but it feels like kind of gross flirting. Um, it's just like, why are you doing that? Ugh, why are you texting her? It's so weird. So gross. And he actually did an interview with Vinnie Politan, of course, after his testimony, because I don't believe he's under subpoena anymore. I don't think he's going to get recalled for any kind of rebuttal for the state. And I don't think the defense is going to call him either again. But he did an interview with Court TV the other day which we'll go into after his testimony, and then we'll hop into Eva's, where he talks about this specific moment in his testimony too, and what he had to say about it.
So, Mr. Benefield, following Ashley's leaving your cousin Doug in September 18th of 2017, were you a fan of Ashley Benefield in May of 2018?
I don't remember specifically that word, but it may have been in our lengthy phone calls and text messages from January through June, possibly.
You expressing support for her?
Support for her story of the case, yes, sir.
Yeah. And
so he's in support of her. Ashley, remember, leaving Doug because she was in fear of her personal safety, according to Ashley. 1, why are you having lengthy phone conversations with Ashley and lengthy text message threads with Ashley? Again, if Ashley's reciprocating, like, okay, you're flirting back, okay. Still, big boundary line crossed, my guy.
did you tell her, in fact, at one point, she married the wrong Benefield?
Sustained.
Did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield?
Relevance.
So they're going to approach again, because if you caught that, Mr. Taylor asks, do you feel like she married the wrong Benefield? So instead of marrying Doug, his cousin that he's oh so close with, why haven't you married me? And again, I can only imagine if you're showing your support for the soon to be ex of your cousin, now late cousin, who you're close with, that leads me to believe that you had some indication that goes against with what you testified when on direct examination, that they were all lovey-dovey and they were in this happy, loving relationship and all was good and fine and etc. It directly contradicts that if you're supporting Ashley in her claims against Doug, saying, yeah, he is, Doug has put my life into danger and I am in fear of him. So can two things be true at the same? I mean, it just seems a little contradictory to me, and it makes me question his credibility. But let me know what you guys think. So they're at sidebar. I think they might be excusing. It's hard to see because Law and Crime doesn't do timestamps. But I think this is when they excuse the. Oh no, they continue with testimony.
Thank you so much.
But then at one point they're going to dismiss the jury. The lawyers are going to argue whether or not this is hearsay. But let's continue with
Mr. Benefield, after expressing your support for Ms. Benefield in 2018, several months after she left your cousin Doug. By the way, do you know why she left your cousin Doug?
The initial reason or the second reason, sir?
Do you know the reasons that Ashley Benefield gave your cousin Doug as to why she left him?
Objection, hearsay.
I mean,
It's not hearsay. You can say yes
Well,
or no.
I'm not going to ask.
Was it being offered for the truth? I mean,
Yeah, it's not being offered for the truth, and I'm not going to go into the substance. I just want to know if this witness knows.
oh,
You can answer. Did Doug share with you the reasons why she left him?
He shared two different reasons.
Yeah. All right. So now you express several months following that you're a fan of hers, and do you also not say to her that she married the wrong Benefield?
I don't remember that specific text in the 6 months of open communication between she and I.
All right. Let me see if I can refresh your recollection.
Objection.
ooh,
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sure.
So they're going to show these text messages to refresh his memory.
I'm going to show you a document. Why don't you take a moment and look at it and tell us if that refreshes your recollection as to whether or not you suggested to Miss Benefield she'd married the wrong Benefield.
It does not say anything about marrying the wrong Benefield.
Does it say,
Objection.
Hold on. Sir, does that document, without identifying it, we need to lay the predicate?
Mr. Benefield, is that document reflective of the communication that you shared with Miss Benefield?
I believe it's correct and unaltered.
And it's between you and Miss Benefield? is
Yes,
it
sir.
not?
Yes, sir.
And it's accurate, is it not?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, may I approach?
Yes.
We want to read the text. We want to read the text.
Objection.
Yeah, approach, Mr. Taylor.
So he gives it back to him. Lawyers approach back at sidebar. And this is witness one, guys. This is how things kicked off with this trial, which is interesting. Very different from the pre-trial hearings, if you guys were following along with that.
Your recollection. Does the document I've shown you, Mr. Benefield, refresh your recollection of that particular exchange?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you tell us, your recollection having been refreshed, whether or not, tell us what your response was to Ashley's text?
This is 6 months, and you want me to just focus on
Just tell us
one
what your,
line. Is that
Mr.
what correct,
Benefield,
Mr. Taylor?
just tell us what your response was to Ashley's text, your recollection having been refreshed.
Ashley says in the text,
Mr. Benefield,
Sustained.
please tell us what your response to Miss Benefield's text was. Now that
Because he can't share what Ashley Benefield says, because I guess that would be hearsay. So he's just asking him, hey, what did you say? That's what we care about. We want to know how you responded in those texts exchanged.
your recollection has been refreshed.
there are multiple on the page, sir.
Mr. Benefield, I think you know what I'm referring to. Would you please answer my question?
I would like to answer it as it pertains to what she said.
I didn't ask you what she said, Mr. Benefield. I asked you to please tell us, your recollection having been refreshed, what you said.
Would you want me to read
And
that?
Judge, I would object. You do not need to be reading from the document.
Deputy, would you please take the jury into the jury room? If you could give us 5 minutes, I appreciate it. Remember, please
Okay.
begin your discussions and deliberations amongst yourselves. You can use your phones if you need to contact people, but don't talk.
So he dismisses the jury. I'm gonna zoom ahead a little bit. Then the lawyers are gonna argue. I think they also excuse Mr. Benefield as well too.
Of the discussion. When we
And now the lawyers pick up about arguments about hearsay and what Mr. Taylor can or cannot extract from this witness. But it doesn't look good. Like, regardless of what the judge ends up allowing into the rest of cross-examination, what Mr. Taylor can or cannot ask around these text messages, the jury still sees how Tommie Benefield reacted to reading those text messages. They were not shown up on the jumbo screen, so we don't know exactly what was said or not said. I don't know why they weren't shown, if they weren't able to show them, but man, that would have been interesting to see.
began this portion of the discussion, the question was, did you tell Ms. Benefield that she married the wrong person,
The wrong Benefield.
the wrong Benefield? And I sustained that as hearsay with no exception. I found that it didn't provide impeachment of any prior inconsistent statement. What I did allow was him to testify as to his then existing mental, physical, or emotional conditions or feelings, with the question being, did you feel that she had married the wrong Benefield? There was then the attempt to use these text messages that I still have not seen. I don't know what the substance of them was, but where we were was my understanding, and what I heard was the defense was attempting to refresh the witness's recollection.
Mhm.
And what I have said is it sounded like it started to morph into some mix of impeachment and refreshing recollection and some elements of introducing a past recollection recorded. And that's where we're at. So,
So
state your objection.
the
My
judge
objection, first of all, is the
summarizing.
predicate has been laid to refresh recollection. But then the witness has not been asked what his recollection is, other than to read it off of the paper, which is commingling past recollection in either past recorded or something of that nature. I think we're commingling the two different things. And if this witness needs to be asked, if it refreshes his recollection, then he can be asked that question without reading the document. I would object to any reading of the document because it is extrinsic evidence if it's being used for impeachment. I do not believe his state of mind is relevant to a material issue in this case. I think the defense is trying to say that it goes to bias, but I'm not quite sure how that fits into it. So my objection would be it's improper refreshing recollection. It's improper impeachment. It's also improper prior recorded recollection, and I would object to that being.
So the state is essentially arguing that the defense is trying to impeach this witness and claim that he's biased, he's not credible, based on this text exchange specifically between him and Ashley Benefield. And I tend to agree with the defense because it kind of does show his bias. I mean, on one hand, you're talking about how these two were so lovey-dovey and they seemed great and everything was copacetic, which might open the door for the state to really take off with their case and trying to prove that Ashley is some kind of master manipulator. But it's like, why, if Tommie Benefield felt that way, why would he continue to open the lines of communication and text her and call her and want to keep in touch with her if he, one, didn't have some kind of feelings towards her or was interested in her, or if he even genuinely believed her and believed what she was saying was true about these allegations she makes later on about Doug. I mean, we don't know what the text messages say. They'll talk a little bit about, I guess, the context of the text thread, but I I do think it kind of shows his bias in a regard and kind of contradicts his earlier testimony. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.
That's fine.
Your response?
So now we're going to hear from the defense and their argument.
Yes. So as succinctly as I can, Your Honor, he's a creep. He acknowledged being a creep, and the jury will conclude he's a creep. It goes directly to his character and his bias. And that's why, after he said, yes, it was accurate, I recall it, he cannot bring himself to say it. And the reason he can't bring himself to say it is because he knows that all these women on the jury are going to know exactly what he was referring to. So I am trying to impugn his credibility after listening to everything that he had to say to set up the state's position about how this relationship was so lovey-dovey between Miss Benefield and Douglas Benefield, and what a wonderful relationship it was. Here, we now have this witness very begrudgingly admitting that after Miss Benefield leaves Douglas Benefield, and she leaves the letter, which I know the court has seen because I attached it as an earlier exhibit to a motion, he's still supporting her. And he's not only supporting her, but he's telling her she married the wrong Benefield. In my world, Your Honor, based upon the rules of evidence, I am entitled to go after his credibility, which he has put in question by virtue of taking the witness stand and becoming a witness. I did it the way the court wanted. I asked the magic question, does this refresh your recollection? He said it did. Now I want him to tell me, in response to my question, did you tell Miss Benefield she married the wrong Benefield? And he cannot bring himself to acknowledge it. He wants to talk about anything else but that. And I think, Your Honor, anything that I'm capable of showing where this witness, Doug Benefield's loving cousin, Tommie Benefield, where this witness showed his support for Ashley Benefield after she left Douglas Benefield, goes directly to his credibility. You can't get up there and testify to all of these things about how wonderful this relationship was, and then on cross-examination have to acknowledge that you were still saying you're a fan of Miss Benefield's after.
A fan pining after her. I mean, that's kind of the energy I get. Again, I've never been in contact with any of my ex's family members, regardless of how close of a relationship I had with them or not, how well we got along. I've never, I don't know if you guys have, if that's just, if you think this is normal behavior, but it just does feel a little like Mr. Taylor said, a little bit creepy, especially too, because not only because you're crossing boundary lines for you and your cousin, if he really is your bro and you guys are really close, why would you cross that line with him? Unless you either one had your own motive to potentially try to engage in a relationship with Ashley, which is just gross and creepy, or if you actually genuinely believed her and believed the allegation she was claiming. And if that was the case, why didn't you testify to that earlier? So I think it does kind of, I think this is a really strong argument from the defense in regards to his credibility.
After she leaves him, knowing the reason she left him, I intentionally didn't go into the reasons to try to be straight with the court.
Yes.
But now I'm attempting to impugn his
And
credibility.
remember too, because he couldn't ask what the two reasons were as to why Ashley left Doug. One can only use context clues as to why, because she felt like her life was in danger. Things could potentially escalate into a more dangerous situation for her and her unborn child, or whatever the other reason could be. I mean, that's the only thing I could potentially think of, but I'm sure those are the two reasons that are called out in the letter that Mr. Taylor is referring to, the letter that Ashley Benefield left on, I think, the bed when she left Douglas Benefield to go to Florida. Because she just left. It seems like that is the state's position, is that Ashley just left Doug this note without telling him and just pieced out.
And he knows it, Judge. He's looking at me like a deer in the headlights.
I'm going to allow you to respond. I previously mentioned about confining arguments to legal and factual bases. I am also going to direct both sides to refrain from vituperative ad hominem attacks. I don't think we need to resort to name calling. I think it's inappropriate and unprofessional to refer to a witness as a creep. All right, with that said, go ahead for your response.
The first thing, Judge, I don't know if you have the copy of the text message up there.
Talk about a smacking from the judge. Definitely ain't no Bev. I don't think Bev would have acknowledged that. Definitely a verbal spanking. And this judge does give it to Mr. Taylor a couple of times. He does verbally spank him a few times, reprimands him, make sure he knows that he's the one whose house you're in. But I mean, unprofessional, maybe. But it does. I agree with Mr. Taylor. It does come off creepy. Like, just him texting her alone as much as having long conversations over a 6-month period, that's weird. Why are you calling her? Why are you texting her? It's bizarre and weird, and this is before she even gives birth. It's not even like you're Tommie, you're not even Douglas Benefield's brother or anything like that. Or like a mutual friend. Then I could kind of see a world where this is less creepy, but this, I don't know. It gives almost like creepy uncle vibes. Like that weird uncle that just always says the weird, always just like makes you feel a little slimy and uncomfortable at family parties. That's the kind of vibe I get from him. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.
Give it to you. Nowhere in there does it say she married Doug Benefield. That is not what it says, first of all. And second of all, Tommie Benefield never said that anything about their relationship and the tenor of their relationship once she left. He said, when I saw them together, they looked fine. Just because that changes down the road and he knows they're having problems, I am unaware of how that affects his credibility. He can clearly see that they're having problems later on down the road. I don't see how the timing being different somehow makes him inconsistent and somehow that attacks his credibility or it shows his bias. If Mr. Taylor wants to ask him, were you aware that there were problems after that? Yes, I was aware of that. I mean, in Mr. Taylor's argument, he is impeaching the fact that Tommie Benefield saw them acting loving to each other. If that wants to be impeached or explored, then ask Mr. Benefield if he saw them after that or knew that they were not loving and having that type of relationship.
And that is a fair point. I will give that to state, is that everything it seems like he was testifying to was before the fact that she left. So that is a fair question. And I would be curious to see if Mr. Taylor does end up asking Tommie Benefield that. Like, did you notice their relationship after the fact? But still, that doesn't discredit the fact that he seems to be siding with Ashley, in one sense, or at least kind of being two-faced with his cousin, maybe trying to still be his support system behind the scenes, but then behind his back, he's texting his wife, soon to be ex-wife. It's just a little weird, but it's a fair point from the state.
I don't understand the relevance of these types of conversations. I think the defense tends to say everything is about bias, but it has to comport with the rules of evidence. And I would say that this does not.
All right, thank you both very much. So my ruling earlier was that these statements by Mr. Benefield towards the defendant were hearsay. I wasn't aware of any exception that would allow them. They appear to be offered for the truth of the matter that is asserted. So I didn't allow them on that grounds. What I allowed was the defense to ask, because there had been testimony by Tommie Benefield that they were always respectful to each other, they never saw anything except care for each other, and they were in love both ways. I think it is an impeachable question to ask, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? But it's not what he wrote. It's what he felt. That's where you're mixing apples and oranges, the defense is. The question that was presented to me was, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? He can answer yes or no. If there's then some extrinsic evidence that may impeach him on that point, I would then have to make a determination is that extrinsic evidence admissible or not? Because if it's a collateral matter that's not material, then as you well know, Mr. Taylor, you get the answer you get. Where we had an additional part of this analysis was the fact that there was a demonstrated lack of memory, because the answer was, I don't know, as opposed to, no, I didn't say that, or yes, no, I didn't feel that, yes, I did feel that. So then the path we started on was refreshing recollection. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned pre-trial, I expect attorneys to know the differences between impeachment by a prior inconsistent statement, that's one path. Refreshing recollection is a second path, and introduction of past recollection recorded, which is a separate path.
So, and again, that is a fair point from the judges saying, like, well, that's not what these text messages read specifically. He didn't necessarily say you married the wrong Benefield in this specific text thread. Does that mean that he said it in another text thread that was allowed that wasn't allowed maybe into discovery? But still, that's not the evidence that's being presented before the witness or before the jury. So again, it does kind of lead to a little bit of, I guess, speculation in that regard. But what the judge is ultimately allowing is that the defense can ask, is that how you felt? Regardless of any of that, the jury has now seen how flustered this entire exchange, this text exchange, bringing it up in court in front of, obviously thousands and potentially even hundreds of thousands of viewers across the world tuning into this case because it's being filmed. I guess it could be embarrassing. And now Tommie Benefield's also married too, so I'm sure that caused maybe some problems back at home, that maybe he had to explain that his wife wasn't actually attuned to before. But he's going to ultimately rule that the defense can ask, is that how you felt? But not, is that what you said? Is that what the text messages read? If that's what the text messages read, and that's what the judge is saying, if there is actual evidence to prove that you can impeach him on, then yeah, go ahead, go for it. So I think that is a fair ruling. But that being said, were there more text messages that may or may not have been allowed into evidence? Is this exactly relevant? A lot of people don't like to show, especially anybody who experienced some kind of DV or even SA, just as myself has, is you don't always want to show what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on behind closed curtains. So this could have been news. Maybe Ashley confided in Tommie Benefield. Maybe they got along really well. So I think this is ultimately a fair ruling. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
So,
What did you take the document testify?
I asked him. So once he said that he recalls, I then asked him if he said that you married the wrong Benefield. That's what I said. I will be happy to go through that again, Your Honor. Now, did I leave the document there when I asked him that? Yes. I didn't feel it was necessary to take the document back. But after he acknowledged that his memory was refreshed, I asked him, did you say that she married the wrong Benefield? And that's where we were when Your Honor sent the jury out. He was trying to come to terms with how he was going to answer that. of continued support for Ms. Benefield.
Doesn't say what you're asking him.
You should be, Your Honor. What that suggests is
It's not correct.
Okay, so we're gonna skip ahead now. I'm gonna see if I can switch over to Court TV just because, again, I know that Law and Crime doesn't like when you use their stuff, but it was super glitchy on Court TV. So I'm gonna hop back to Court TV. So yeah, again, the judge ultimately rules like, hey, this wasn't what is in this text exchange that you're claiming to be refreshing his memory on. We're jumping back into Court TV. They have this break. They bring him back, I believe, very briefly. They bring the jury back. Okay, hopefully it's not a glitch fest. If it is, we will go back to Law and Crime.
All right, Mr. Benefield, come on back in and resume the witness stand. You'll recall that you are under oath.
Yes, sir.
Sir, as we took that break, did anybody attempt to approach you or speak with you about your testimony, the evidence, or this case?
No, sir.
Did you speak with anyone about your testimony, the questions asked of you, or the evidence of this case?
No, sir.
All right. We'll bring the jury in. You all go ahead and have a seat. Whenever you find your spots, just sit on down. All right, everyone gonna have a seat. Members of the jury, during that break, did anybody discuss the case amongst yourselves, discuss the case with anybody outside of the jury, or do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about? Everybody says no. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Benefield, when we last were assembled, we were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir. I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep our communication open between us.
You know,
Was it a joke? And he says, what?
married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir. I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep our communication open between us.
So you do acknowledge it. So you do. I gotta go back.
Benefield, when we last were assembled, we were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir. I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep our communication open between us.
So he admits it. So he did admit that he said something to that effect, whether it was in that text exchange or not. He's admitting it. He's saying it was an attempt to keep the lines of communication open. Why would you want to keep the lines of communication open, dude? That's your cousin. That's your buddy's wife who's leaving him. There's just so much just like lines crossing, and you're going to see that more and more in this case with a lot of the witnesses crossing boundaries from professionals. In this case, this is a family member, but you'll also see a lot of other boundary lines crossing. So I don't know, does this give you guys the same icky feeling that it gives me? Let me know in the comment section below. But we're soon going to be wrapping up with Tommie Benefield's testimony. Then I want to get into his Court TV appearance. Is a really short interview clip with him and Vinnie Politan from the other day after his testimony that he gave explaining this series of events during cross-examination.
You know, we've established that you were aware that Ashley left Doug in September of 2017.
Yes, sir.
And we've also established that following that, you expressed your support of her.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I want to direct your attention specifically to the month of November of 2017. Were you
2 months
aware
later.
of a domestic violence injunction that Ms. Benefield sought and obtained from South Carolina court?
Yes, sir. At that time.
And did you express to Ms. Benefield
You ask the question.
your support of her after she obtained that domestic violence injunction?
Sustained.
Did you support Ms. Benefield in November of 2017 following the issuance of a domestic violence injunction?
Not specifically about that, sir.
Do you recall expressing your support on Saturday, November 4th, 2017?
I don't remember that specifically, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah,
Benefield, I'm going to show you a document, see if this refreshes your recollection.
I feel like this just helps the defense more and more. He's supportive of Ashley after she leaves her husband, his cousin, the guy he's allegedly super close with. I don't want to zoom too far ahead because Court TV's feed on this day was a little glitchy.
Areas that I checked, refresh your recollection.
Yes, sir. Those appear to be my statements.
All right, the recollection having been refreshed, Mr. Benefield, on November 4th, following the issuance of the domestic violence injunction to Ms. Benefield, did you express your support for her?
There are two problems with your question for me, sir. I'm going to ask you.
Would you answer my question, and then you can certainly feel free to explain it.
I believe I was unaware of any result of any pending case in South Carolina at the time I texted that.
I thought you just told us you were aware.
I became aware after the fact when the mutual protection order was entered. I found out about it after the fact, but I don't remember the date of that event as it relates to the November 4th.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
State, any redirect?
No.
Could this witness be released?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, can this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Sir, the prior restrictions that I placed upon you are removed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
So I know that was a big question for a lot of people that we didn't know, and some other streams I was tuning into the other day. But yes, Benefield has been released from his subpoena. This is important information because when we get into Eva Benefield's testimony, which we will get into in just a little bit, she is still under subpoena. And there's some controversy behind that actually occurred in day 3. So today, real time, which we will cut to later on this video. But first, I want to get to this interview with Vinnie Politan where Douglas Benefield talks about this moment in court with Mr. Taylor. So one moment, please. Okay, so now we're going to get into the interview with Vinnie Politan from Court TV that Douglas Benefield, since he has been released from his subpoena to the court so he can speak to the press. He can say, essentially, from what I understand, anything he wants about his testimony. So anybody who had questions about that, no, he has been, in fact, released. And also, I want to make a point, it is amazing having YouTube Premium with no ads. It makes these videos and these recordings a heck of a lot easier. So let's dive in.
Tommie, first witness on the stand today. Did you know that going in, and how do you think things went for you?
Hey, Vinny, thanks again for having me tonight and for letting us speak for our family and our side of the case. I knew I was going to be first up because of background, in particular because I had several weekends and several events with Doug and Ashley specifically, and that I ended up maintaining that open relationship, open communication with her long after they separated, giving her a chance to voice her concerns and allegations all the way up until my deposition in 2018. I believe we had a good day today in the prosecution side of the presentation. This is still the state presenting their information all day today and into tomorrow. It was very, very clear where Mr. Taylor was trying to go in his part of the case. But I don't think that the case is going quite the way he wants to. We have the single events that Doug admitted to a long time ago, but we don't have any events ever accused of him or found true of him once Ashley moved to Florida. So there's a big difference between what happened in the home in South Carolina and then all the 2-3 years that they were in Florida.
The single events meaning that he punched the family dog in the face. And I'm sorry, like one of our neighbors in the previous place we lived in did the same thing. And that just is absolutely disgusting and uncalled behavior. And if you are somebody who does that, those tendencies, like, people who don't have violent tendencies usually don't have a history of hurting animals. Also throwing their 13-year-old cat as well too, and that's extremely disturbing to me, and I apologize for that, but that was also testified to in court. That Doug did those things, and that might have been the only two things that you're claiming now to be aware of, but at the same time, it seems like you're kind of contradicting yourself, that you were opening the lines of communication to understand Ashley's side as well too. I'm fairly certain there were more allegations, and there are, which come out later in testimony, about Doug's behavior and his violent tendencies towards and around her.
Florida, off and on together.
Now, there was a moment today, and as I'm watching this, the jury's out, you're out of the courthouse as well, and her attorney starts talking about you because there's some dispute about some testimony that they're trying to get you to talk about. So I don't know if you've seen or heard this, but I want to play it for you to get your reaction. Here again is Ashley Benefield's attorney talking about you.
As succinctly as I can, Your Honor, he's a creep. He acknowledged being a creep, and the jury will conclude he's a creep. It goes directly to his character and his bias. And that's why, after he said, yes, it was accurate, I recall it, he cannot bring himself to say it. And the reason he can't bring himself to say it is because he knows that all these women on the jury are going to know exactly what he was referring to.
Okay, so Tommie, I heard that, and folks watching heard that. I wanted to give you some time to respond because there's the rules of the court. You can't say everything you want to say on the witness stand. So give us your side, because this is all referencing text messages between you and Ashley, and in one of them, it's alleged that you said that, oh, Ashley, you married the wrong Benefield.
And that's not what the bubble says. It specifically said wrong Benefield. What I tried to do was give it the context appropriate to what Ashley has said in the text message prior to that. And of course, he's painting it the way he wants to. I've never in my life ever been accused of anything that he accused me of today. I was answering that what she was looking for in conduct, that there were different Benefields, and she was talking about the wrong Benefield, the wrong behavior. And I've never been accused of being a creep. Everyone in my company, everyone in my...
Like, what? Talk about a word salad. Like, huh? What? And you could tell he wanted to give this context. So he does say wrong Benefield. That is shown, is whether or not he said you married the wrong Benefield. And again, this is why I wish we were able to actually read the text message thread, because then we can get some more clarity as to how that conversation unfolded. But he's saying no, like in that, I don't even know what he's trying to say here. Like, why else would you say wrong Benefield?
He's painting it the way he wants to.
Oh, Ashley, you married the wrong Benefield.
And that's not what the bubble says. It specifically said wrong Benefield. What I tried to do was give it the context appropriate to what Ashley has said in the text message prior to that. And of course, he's painting it the way he wants to. I've never in my life ever been accused of anything that he accused me of today. I was answering that what she was looking for in conduct, that there were different Benefields, and she was talking about the wrong Benefield, the wrong...
What? What? So in regards to conduct, so what other Benefield would she be talking? She's talking about Doug, and she's trying to understand, hey, this is what I'm speculating, because again, we haven't read the text messages, so this is my speculation brain, speculation warning, that probably if Ashley is talking to his cousin, who allegedly knows him maybe better than Ashley, right? Or has, has met his other wives, other previous relationships. Did you see any signs? This is what one could speculate. Maybe she was asking, did you see any previous signs about Doug demonstrating similar destructive or aggressive behavior, violent behavior towards his previous wives, previous relationships, towards his daughter, whatever? And then him responding with, this is kind of what it sounds like. And Tommie Benefield responding, wrong Benefield. So what other Benefield is an aggressive Benefield, unless you're not talking about yourself and saying, well, I'm none of those things. I'm not aggressive. I'm not violent. I don't do any of those things. So it is hard to put the two and two together without having the full context of the text thread, but it's a little confusing, his answer, and it seems like he's still not giving a full picture. And to be fair too, I don't think he can necessarily say what exactly was in those text messages, just because it's part of the evidence that's presented in court, and it wasn't read out loud for all to hear. So I don't know if he can or cannot speak on behalf of certain things, but he's not subpoenaed anymore, sequestered under his subpoena anymore. So I don't know.
The wrong behavior. And I've never been accused of being a creep. Everyone in my company, everyone in my business, everywhere I've ever been, no one's ever accused me the way he did today.
That's also weird too. Everyone in my business. So like, are you referring to female employees? Like you making weird like that's like a just a little weird of like a justification. I've never been called, not even in my workplace, not even like I just find that a little bit weird.
Discussing is my point of view. I was out of the room for it. My family and I talked about it this afternoon and this evening. But the accusation that they're making about that statement is completely out of context. And I certainly was going to try to give the question and answer I gave, as opposed to just that single bubble by itself, because that was not part of the way that treatment and that testimony should go.
And I got the feeling that there was a little more to it, and it's about context, but obviously we know what he's attempting to do and what's happening. So this trial's moving very quickly.
So that was him speaking about that. We're not gonna watch the rest of this because I don't. It pains me to stream court TV because I have a lot of feelings about their coverage for the Karen Reed case that I don't like. I have a very inner struggle with my feelings towards Vinnie Politan and his reporting. But nevertheless, I think it was important to share that clip and get his perspective as well too. But it just felt like more, I don't know, it just kind of complicates things a little bit more. Like, why couldn't you talk about just the rough context of what that conversation was about? It just sounded very word salady to me. Like, if she wasn't talking about Doug Benefield, then who else would she have been talking about other than you saying wrong Benefield? Like, it just, context is important, I agree, but I think it just leaves more room for more questions. So now we're going to get into Eva Benefield's testimony, which is pretty short. Honestly, I don't feel like she did a lot for the state. If anything, she seemed to have supported the defense's case a little bit more because she's testifying that, yeah, I did witness the aftermath of some of these alleged events that occurred that Ashley is alleging happened between her and Doug. There being holes in the wall, even a small hole that would mimic something like a bullet, to confirm that, yeah, he did fire off a firearm in their home to scare her. She didn't witness these events. So again, I don't know what this really does for the state. It's not like she's denying any of it. She is acknowledging that these things did happen, maybe not in front of her. So I don't really know what the point was in calling Eva Benefield. In a similar way that why did they call John O'Keefe's niece and nephew to the stand too? What did this possibly prove for the state's case? But you let me know in the comment section what you think below. We're only going to play a little bit of her testimony. It is pretty short. But I do want to get to where she speaks about her relationship to Ashley, what she thought about Ashley, what she observed about their relationship, etc.
He was my father,
And who was your mother?
Renee Benefield.
And we heard from the previous witness, she died, unfortunately, at some time before this case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you first find out about someone named Ashley Benefield?
It was August of 2016, about 9 months after my mom passed.
Okay. And how did you find out about it?
My dad was on the phone when he picked me up from school, and he had his phone on speaker, and they mentioned him having a girlfriend, and if he was going to bring his girlfriend to a conference that they had that weekend.
And was that the first time you had the information that there might have been a girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 15.
At the time, were you upset with him about that?
No, I just told him that I trusted him, and if that's what made him happy, that I would be happy for him.
And about how long after that did you find out they were married?
It was 2 days after.
And how did you find out that they were married?
My dad came up into my room, and he said, "Eva, we need to have a chat downstairs with Ashley." She was at the house at the time, and I said, I don't think we need to. I understand that you're dating her and you're happy, but please just, give me my space a little bit. I don't want to have a conversation.
Which is fair too. I mean, that's like a lot to unload on a 15-year-old who just lost her mother 9 months ago. And imagine being the kid and being like, yeah, I found out 2 days after my father married his new wife after only knowing her for 13 days, that he's married and I wasn't even invited to the wedding, likely because Doug didn't want her to find out, didn't want her to get upset. That's their business. But I can only imagine just how deeply traumatizing and upsetting this might have been for Ashley and being a teenager and being like, yo, you, especially after you told me you weren't going to do this again. How can I possibly trust you? And I just feel for Eva in so many different ways. It's just really incredibly sad. And I think it's amazing that she was able to take the stand and to testify and be as strong as she is, to power on without having any parents left in this world. It's just deeply upsetting, and I don't understand what the point of her being called on the stand is. I guess other than to just give a characterization of the person that she thought Doug was. But of course, she's going to have her own feelings towards Doug. Of course, she's probably going to feel like that's her dad. He's always going to be her dad. She's always going, and she had a close relationship to him, which she testifies to. He was a great dad to her. And I think two things can be true at the same time. You can be an amazing dad. You can do all the right things in one regard, but then you can also be a piece of human waste at the same time to other people. So I just can't even imagine the amount of emotions that are going through her mind right now.
And he said, no, I think it's really important we do. And I said, the only time that I would want to have a conversation with y'all is if you told me that you were going to propose. And when those words came out of my mouth, he told me that they were married.
So I found out they were married.
Yes.
Did Ashley eventually move into your house?
Yes.
And that was the house in South Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time, who all lived in the house? Just the three of you?
Yes.
How was their relationship together that you saw?
They were just with each other all the time. It was very lovey-dovey. They were very touchy-feely, PDA, any event with school or extracurricular that I was in, they were together. They'd go grocery shopping together, go travel together. They never left each other's side.
Okay. And how did you and Ashley get along?
It was friendly at first.
Okay. You said it first?
Yes.
And then what happened?
Over time, she tried to reprimand me a little bit more and kind of step into a motherly role. And I did not like that because it was so short after my mom passed away.
Okay.
Which is fair, which is totally fair. And I feel like any teenager would probably respond in the same way, especially when your dad is marrying not only a new woman less than a year after your own mother passing. And that it's not like they were divorced or anything or separated. They were still together. And now he brings this 24-year-old who's less than 10 years closer in age to his daughter than to himself. Ashley's stepping into what seems like a stepmotherly role. She's not having it. And I can understand that. It's like, who are you to tell me? Like, I just met you. And probably Ashley not knowing how to be a mom. She's only 24. So, and I remember how, not that like, I know there are a lot of people who are young parents, but for the average 24-year-old, and just thinking back on my own personal experiences being 24, I was definitely not ready for children or marriage or any of that. I was not. I was still figuring out a lot of crap, and I'm still figuring out a lot of crap, and I'm not ready to have a child. Even at 28 years old, I am not ready to have a child just yet. So I can only imagine the kind of weird, awkward dynamic between the two, and to go from being friendly to being stepmom. And I mean, it almost reminds me of that movie Stepmom in a way, with Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon.
And in Ashley's interactions with you, or interactions that she had or disagreements that she had with your father, how did you observe her to act?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, it wasn't a good question. Whenever she had a disagreement with you, how would she act?
It was almost temper tantrum-like. It was
Objection. Impermissible character evidence.
I'm sorry?
Character evidence.
Overruled.
Okay, so it was temper tantrum-like, and you didn't sound like you were finished. What were you saying?
she would go directly to my dad and tell him that I wasn't obeying.
Okay. And
Like a stepmom
her
would.
reactions to you seem to be on the level of the situation, or did she get more angry at the situation?
Usually they were overreactions over small things.
Okay. And how about interactions with your dad? Did you ever hear her argue with your father?
I heard her strongly voice her opinions over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, you said over and over and over again. Is that something that you heard on a regular basis or something you only heard once?
It was on a regular basis.
Okay. And when she was voicing her opinions to your father, was he ever reacting to that?
No, he would just sit quietly and listen.
Did you ever see them fight?
No.
Verbally fight?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see them physically fight?
No.
How often would you say that Ashley's father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashley was trying to get her point across that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. And what would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
No further questions.
So
Cross.
short, sweet,
Yes.
to the point. She never witnessed any DV in front of herself. That doesn't mean it wasn't going on. And if Doug was as close with his daughter as Eva says that her and her dad were, of course he's not going to want to paint that light in front of her. Of course he's not going to do that in front of his own daughter. So, and I almost wonder if she had witnessed any of the same behavior that she just testified to between her and her father, her and her mother and her father before she passed. Because there is evidence that comes into play where his late wife, Renee, Eva's mother, where she talks about how he kicked her during their honeymoon. So it seems like there were similar violent tendencies going on there. Now, whether or not Eva was aware of that, I don't know. Now we're going to go to Cross.
Good morning, Ms. Benefield.
Good morning.
We met previously at a deposition, correct?
Correct.
And I apologize to you for meeting you under these circumstances. I'm required to ask you a few questions based on the testimony that you've given us.
Very similar to how Mr. Yannetti, I think he was the one who did cross-examination. We don't know because that was a closed court when the children were called up to the stand in the Officer John O'Keefe case, Karen Reed case. But it was very similar phrasing of, I'm sorry that you're here today and you have to do this. So again, kind of making the state look like, hey, you're putting this poor girl through this. Like, yikes. Trying to win some sympathy points for the defense and saying, like, this wasn't us. We didn't call her. We didn't think it was necessary to call her. But because she's being called, we are going to ask her a couple of questions. We are required to, etc. So
You lived in the house at the time that Ashley and your father were first married.
Yes.
And you found out from your father that he had married Ashley when he introduced her to you.
It wasn't when I was first introduced. It was a day after.
So the day after, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So your mother had,
I also think she also say 2 days before she met her, 2 days after they got married, or 2 days, 2 days after the fact.
passed away approximately 8 months earlier,
9 months.
9 months earlier. And your father, with no advance knowledge, came and introduced you to his new wife.
Yes.
There was a hole in the ceiling of the kitchen in your home, correct?
Correct.
You know what that hole was, how it got there?
Objection. Oh, first, here's some.
I don't know if it will or not.
I would prefer the question not be asked.
Okay.
Can we approach?
Yes.
So they're going to approach about the firearm that was fired off in the home to intimidate Ashley, according to the defense. But this was confirmed by Tommie Benefield that this event did occur. Now I don't think they were allowed to actually testify this in this testimony during the trial, but I know during the pretrial hearings when they had called him up to discuss his testimony and what they were going to allow in and what they weren't going to allow in, he did confirm that Doug Benefield had told him, yes, this did happen. I did do this. I did punch the dog, etc. So I think that's why they weren't able to get into certain specifics about that.
So I think the question that was pending, Ms. Benefield, was, did you know how?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
Let me back up. You told us there was a hole in the ceiling of your kitchen.
Yes.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round,
Yes.
consistent with an object,
Objection, speculation.
Let me finish the question.
consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Overruled.
Were there holes in the drywall of your home?
There was one.
Was it from the closet?
No.
Outside the drywall?
No.
All right. Where was
It was near the kitchen.
it? Did you know how it got there?
Yes.
Was the hole consistent with the size of a fist?
Yes.
Was that hole patched?
Eventually.
Who patched it?
My father.
Did you know that your father studied close quarters defense in the Navy?
Yes.
And tell us what close quarters defense comprises.
I'll allow it briefly so she can explain the basis of her knowledge.
Well, let me give the court a little better insight into this. Ms. Benefield, do you hold a black belt?
Yes.
And are you trained in defensive combat fighting?
Taekwondo.
Did you and your father often discuss different styles of defensive fighting?
We had the conversations when I was practicing, when I was
Okay.
10.
And tell us were you trained in close quarters defense?
Yes.
All right. Tell us what it entails.
In hand-to-hand combat.
Okay. And it's the type of hand-to-hand combat where if confronted by a weapon, rather than turning and run, you're trained as to how to remove the weapon from the other person's hands.
Well, you're told to first ask for no conflict, and then if they proceed, yes.
Yeah. In other words, your objective is to take the weapon away.
If there's a weapon involved, yes.
Which again is interesting because going back to Taylor's opening statement when he was talking about the series of events that unfolded that day, Ashley went to the bedroom, retrieved the firearm, Doug followed her in, she pulled it on him. He got into a certain, defensive fighting stance. That again, this is what the defense's story. This is the defense's narrative. So it seems like he was trained in this. He knew how to disarm somebody, even if he didn't have a firearm on his person himself. And he did know how to do that. So it's just further confirmation. Again, not tons of significance came out of Eva's testimony, but again, we're just getting that verbal confirmation of, yeah, he did know how to do that. Yes, I did see these holes in the wall. I can confirm that. I do know how they got there.
Were you aware that a domestic violence injunction had been issued by the court in South Carolina?
No.
Give me 1 second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
No. He wasn't aware that Ashley had filed a restraining order in South Carolina against Doug. So he's going to go consult with his paralegal.
With each other.
Dad fixated with Ashley.
I think they were fixated with each other.
Did you make a prior state? Whoops. Did you express at any time that your dad, your words, not mine, was fixated with Ashley?
I might have.
Give me just a moment, Judge.
Forward. Okay, they're gonna approach. They're back.
The word that you had used to refer to your dad's interest in Ashley was what?
When are you referencing?
In general. Was the word fixated? Was that the word you used?
Yes.
That's all.
All right, redirect.
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be released?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, but no, so you know. All right, Ms. Benefield, you've not been released from your subpoena, all right? And the rule of sequestration has been invoked. What that means is that you can't be in the courtroom anytime that there's testimony being given or evidence being presented. Because this is being shown on TV or the internet or something, you can't watch it outside of court. You can't watch what's going on inside of court. You can't be inside of court. You also may not discuss your testimony with any other witnesses or any of the attorneys. Better practices don't talk about with anybody else. And none of the other witnesses nor the attorneys can talk with you about what's going on in court. Do you understand all of that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, you're not released from your subpoena, so you need to remain available.
Okay.
All right. But for now, you're excused.
So they're going to approach, and later on, you will see that Eva Benefield actually can sit in the courtroom because during other testimony, because of a law called Marcy's Law, where it allows victims' families, even if they are subpoenaed to testify on the stand, they sequestered under subpoena, they can still sit in the courtroom and watch the remaining witness testimony. So I wanted to play that clip because this is going to lead into what events unfolded at the start of trial today with Eva Benefield. After she testified, she allegedly was approached by a reporter in the hallway of the courthouse. She expresses that she was essentially bum rushed, taken off guard, where she spoke briefly to this reporter. Now, what she said to the reporter, what she didn't say, that is what we're going to find out in watching the unfoldings of today's events in court. Then we will rewind back into day one. We'll proceed with the 911 call, the neighbor's testimony, who made the 911 call. I will give a trigger warning for that if you need to check out during this video, because it's going to be upsetting for you. Please do take care of yourself. Be kind. I will do my best to give a trigger warning before that happens. But right now, I want to fast forward to today's date in court.
After hours yesterday, I was contacted by Judicial Security and notified that a witness who testified and had not been released from subpoena, and again, this is second or third hand, and it's my understanding both parties have been made aware of this, was being interviewed by a news channel reporter in the hallway outside of the courtroom. When deputies were locking up, someone told them that this was going on. I don't think the deputies actually saw it, but it was reported to them.
And Judge, I spoke to the witness, and there was a discussion with the media, but nothing was talked about what was going on in the trial or testimony. And I've spoken with the witness and asked him not to do that anymore before the trial.
This is the first I've heard of that. I wanted to repeat this was.
The reason I didn't speak in specifics is this is all hearsay within hearsay within hearsay.
I understand.
It was reported that it was Eva Benefield gave an interview to a reporter from News Channel 8.
Give me a moment, Ron, please.
Has anybody seen that interview? Was it shared anywhere? Because I couldn't find it. I don't know if they had to like pull the interview or if they hadn't even shared it. And this is just, again, hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay, and something that somebody witnessed, and then, or anybody who's actually in the courtroom, if there is anybody who's tuning in here. Did you see this happen? Did you hear what went down? Were you able to see the interview? I'd be curious to know, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
I believe she's under state.
Yes.
And did the state request that she remain available under the subpoena?
Yes.
Okay. I think perhaps a hearing may be
All right.
The state would not be opposed to a hearing. I can represent that this particular witness did not speak about anything that was prohibited by the rule of sequestration. No one said to this witness, you're not allowed to talk to anybody about the case, just your testimony and the witnesses in this trial going on right now.
All right. Go ahead.
So, not to compound it, but to the extent we're doing housekeeping things now, we also have an issue, Your Honor, with an impeachment witness to Stephanie Murphy, specifically Faith Brown, who is representing Ms. Benefield during the same proceedings. She was not on our witness list, but given the testimony of Ms. Murphy, we are going to have her outside this afternoon, and the court may want to conduct a Richardson hearing as to that. So just for planning purposes.
Brown may be called as a witness.
Yes.
All right. I wasn't going to get too involved in the Richardson hearing yet. It needs to be done, obviously, and I've got a note for that. All right. So on the Eva Benefield potential interview with someone at News Channel 8, you're not asking for any relief. I don't know what relief you're going to ask for, but if you're asking for some relief, I'll let you get started.
Well, the relief I would ask for initially is that she obviously is barred from being called as a rebuttal witness, potentially. Secondarily, to the extent the court admonished her about doing exactly that, which she did, I've observed thus far the court's general admonishment that it gives to witnesses. I'm assuming Ms. Benefield received it as well. Is she in the courtroom, by the way? Ms. Benefield?
Here she is, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to understand that.
All right, ma'am, if you please remove yourself from the courtroom.
So she's watching this happen as they're talking about her. Yikes.
This is a young girl who lost a father. I'm not looking to hurt her, but given her disregard of the court's admonition, I think precluding her from being called as a rebuttal witness at a minimum would be appropriate. Whether or not the court feels any further sanctions are appropriate as a result of her disregard of the court's warning, I defer to you on.
Did you want to be heard at all?
Judge, I would just dispute that she violated exactly the court's order. And if she does testify, she will testify consistently with what she has already testified to in a deposition. So counsel will know if that changes, but we know what she's going to say because she said things already in the deposition. So I don't think any potential harm has come from this.
Rebuttal? All right. Whenever we talk about having a hearing, my assumption at the beginning of that was that it was going to be evidentiary and people were going to call witnesses and present evidence. Here's what the court knows. Someone told a court deputy that they observed Eva Benefield giving an interview to News Channel 8 reporter in the hallway outside of courtroom A after court had concluded for the day. At this point, I have no facts or evidence before me. I've got hearsay within hearsay as to something that happened. Yeah, so I don't.
I'll call her.
I gave you that opportunity. That's what I'm saying is that if everybody wanted a hearing, then
All right, well, I took it for granted that the court would.
I'm not going to assume this is true.
Yeah, so court likes, I'll be happy to call her and we'll have a brief hearing.
Yeah, you
It's up
have
to
to
you.
have evidence.
Can you call Miss Benefield back in?
You got to give everybody a chance to pull the evidence too.
State, just looking at the list, you have 3 witnesses left.
Like, can you call
Do you
the
expect to finish today
reporter?
with the state's case? Come on in, man.
Robert, do we know which deputy reported the matter?
No.
Or any of the deputies in the courtroom that saw the conversation right yesterday afternoon? Do we know which deputy it was?
As I said, it was reported to me that some unidentified person told the deputy.
So not the reporter, or maybe the reporter, but probably not
Are
the
you
reporter.
the one that they told? Okay, right here. Mr. Taylor. Apparently it was reported to Deputy Racky.
To have a moment with the deputy.
Of course, State, you want to be present?
Yeah, State. I like how they're just sitting there like, yeah. So now they're going to ask Eva a couple of questions about what she spoke to the reporter about, which again is really hard to tell without the judge actually seeing the interview itself and seeing that entered into evidence. But they also make some claims about social media posts, which I have pulled up when we will get through in 1
Ms.
second.
Benefield, I remind you that you were under oath. You can get a little bit closer to that microphone and just answer the questions in a loud, clear voice.
Good morning.
You appeared yesterday and testified before Judge White in this case, did you not?
I appeared on Tuesday and testified.
Tuesday. Time flies. At the end of your testimony, do you recall Judge White instructing you about having contact with anyone because you were to remain under subpoena? Do you recall that?
I recall.
Okay. And you were here today because the state requested that you remain as a potential rebuttal witness.
Correct.
Now, what did you think Judge White's directions to you meant?
Well, I was told I wasn't allowed to speak on any of the witnesses in my testimony while in the courtroom.
So, I'm sorry, did you finish?
I'm finished.
Did you realize that when you decided to have a conversation with the reporter?
Yes, sir.
All right. Tell us, if you would. I'm just trying to get an explanation. Tell us, if you would, what you were thinking that.
And I think this is like, because she clearly looks terrified. I mean, she definitely looks like, oh, like I'm in trouble. Like, can I get? And I can't imagine like what's running through her head. So I'm glad he like kind of said like, I'm just trying to understand what was said. Like nobody's trying to get you in trouble necessarily, but it is a violation potentially of your subpoena. And did she actually understand the instructions that the judge gave?
Objection.
Overruled.
Ask her what she said.
What you were thinking that you felt allowed you to do exactly that which Judge White cautioned you not to.
I was caught off guard in the hallway when I was under extreme emotional distress after being here, hearing different testimonies about my father's murder. And when I spoke to the reporter, I made sure not to talk about any of the testimonies or anything that happened in the courtroom or my testimony.
What did you discuss with the reporter?
Just how I felt about the situation and who my dad's character was as I saw him.
When you say about the situation, you mean about the case, the trial?
Not about the trial.
What situation were you referring to?
My emotional state.
You post on social media,
I do.
TikTok,
Yes.
any others?
No.
Following your testimony here last Tuesday, did you make any posts?
I did.
Tell us how many.
3.
3. And tell us one at a time. Were all 3 of them on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening?
1 was on Tuesday.
And when were the other 2?
Yesterday.
Okay. And tell us, as to the first post, what was it about?
I said that I testified.
Okay. And did you have anything to say about your testifying?
I talked about it being on live television,
What else?
that somebody back home was watching.
I assume you have copies on your phone?
I do.
You have your phone with you here today?
I do not. Not on me.
And where is it?
It's over in the benches.
In the bushes?
In the benches.
In the benches here in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
With the court's permission, may she retrieve it so we can see exactly what it was that she posted?
Then I'm going to object if he knows clearly they have to. So
Well, I don't know.
it's an invasion of her privacy. They can do it.
Not if it's on social media, but we started off talking about just
That is
speaking
true.
to some reporter, and now we're talking about a
Like,
social.
it's not an invasion of her privacy if she posted it on social media. But yeah, then the judge chimes in and says, well, whoa. We're not talking about social media. We're talking about what the reporter or what this alleged witness had told the clerk. And it told me, Eva Benefield, they saw Eva Benefield conversing with a reporter. And that's what we're here to talk about, not what she posted on social media. But if she did post something that she wasn't supposed to on social media, and I have pulled up her TikTok account, Eva is pretty active. I don't know if she's since deleted any TikToks. If anybody can let me know, please let me know. But I did pull it up. I'm gonna let this continue a little bit longer, but then I'm gonna pull up her TikTok and what she posted that day from what I can see, unless something was deleted since then or pulled. But it doesn't seem that damning to me personally, at least what she posted on social media. I don't know what she said or didn't say during the interview, though. So that's an entirely different story. And unless we can get the reporter in here to testify, or if we can get the witness in here, the anonymous witness, to testify maybe in a closed court, off camera, just to confirm what they saw or they allegedly saw. If there is a recorded interview, if there's documentation of what was said, that would all be helpful. That's evidence to support this claim, because if she did mention anything about her testimony or the testimony of other people, what she observed in court, that is in violation of her subpoena, and not to drag Eva by any means, but it can cause Ashley to not have a fair trial. So it does raise a lot of alarm bells, in my opinion. So let's let this continue, and then I'll pull up Eva's TikTok.
The media post. If you've seen it and if she's violating the rules, let's just get it out.
Okay, I'm trying to find that out.
So now it's a fishing expedition. If you know a violation, let's talk about it. If not, let's just get moving. We got jury waiting.
I understand that, Judge.
Judges.
How do I know? Like she's told us she posted 3 things. How do I know what it's about? What if one of them involved discussions that were inappropriate? How am I to know that? I've been a little preoccupied, and I don't do social media.
He's like 70 years old. He's like, I
So
don't
if you
do
have
the
specific
TikTok.
evidence, let's talk about it. If not, you have a team. You've got 3 people in court right behind you. I don't know. Maybe they can look it up. But let's focus on what we know about as opposed to digging into speculation.
I have no further questions.
No questions.
Ms. Benefield, when you had this conversation with the reporter in the hallway, were there any other witnesses around?
Yes. I'm sorry. Let me re-answer that question. None that testified.
Okay, so you're saying there were people standing
There
around,
were people
but
around.
none of the witnesses in this case.
No, sir. Not that.
Okay.
Did you talk specifically about the questions that were asked of you or the testimony you've given?
No, sir.
All right. Do you have any follow-up questions to my questions?
No, sir.
So she was saying essentially that there were other people around her when she did give this interview, I guess, with the reporter, made a statement to the reporter, but not necessarily witnesses in this case, maybe people of the courtroom who were sitting in. So notice how she kind of backtracked. She's like, yeah, there were witnesses, but nobody who's testifying in this trial. But also too, I don't know if the witnesses are also privy to knowing up until, obviously she's allowed to sit in the courtroom due to Marcy's law and she can see who's being called in real time, but does she have prior knowledge of who the other witnesses are that are going to be called, or is that privileged to just the state itself and the defense? I don't know. And to the court, I don't know if she's privy to that knowledge, but how would you necessarily know who's going to be testifying or not testifying later in the trial as well? So interesting. Very interesting.
Do you have any follow-up questions to my questions? All right, Ms. Benefield, you can step back out. Did you want to call any other witnesses?
No, sir.
State.
No.
All right.
She's definitely nervous.
All right, Ms. Benefield's out of the courtroom. Go ahead, sir. Do you have any argument? Do you want to seek any relief? Do you want to argue in support of any relief?
I think she violated the court's admonition that the court routinely gives to the witnesses, and as a result, again, I have no personal interest in seeing the young woman suffer, but I do think violation of the court's admonition is sufficient to strike her as a
Fair argument, but we have to see the interview.
Judge, I think you asked her the relevant questions. I think the questions that you asked her are the admonitions that you gave her as a witness, and she did not break any of those.
You can't make a ruling
Fine,
without
folks.
seeing it.
I'm certainly distressed that, let me say first, the media policy for the 12th Circuit prohibits the media from conducting interviews inside of the courthouse. It is my understanding that our media and public relations person met this morning or was going to meet this morning with the media to go over the administrative order again, because certainly I think the media is and should be aware of that administrative order and comply with it.
Yeah.
The specific incident that we're talking about after hours yesterday, the facts that are in front of me are not that Ms. Benefield spoke about her testimony or the questions asked. But I also have not heard from the reporter, and I have not seen any tape or footage.
Yep.
At this point, I'm going to reserve on the request, and I'll
Yep.
make a decision.
Good
If and
call.
when she's called again, I'll make a decision at that point. You just have to remind me if we get there.
That was an excellent call by the judge. Like, how can you make a possible ruling based on hearsay? Because at this point, we don't know what was said or not said. All we do know is based on the Eva's TikTok, which I'm going to pull up now, and over the last few days, the TikToks that she has posted, I haven't seen anything that could be troublesome for the case and put Ashley's defense at any kind of unfair advantage, like give the state an unfair advantage, give the defense any kind of unfair or unfair trial. There wasn't really anything in here, so this was, I think, before she got in the
Good
courtroom.
morning. The trial has started. It's jury selection
Yeah,
now. As
so
y'all can
this was jury selection before she testified. So before she was sequestered into her subpoena. This was, I think, the night before.
I just testified, and y'all don't know what it's
And this is right after she testified. So it's a really short clip. It's only 9 seconds.
like to have to testify in your dad's murder trial and know that your crush is watching you back home on TV. That's nerve-wracking. I just testified, and y'all don't know what it's like to have to testify in your dad's murder trial and know that your crush is watching you back home on TV. That's nerve-wracking.
So that was the one that she posted immediately after. Or it seems like when she left after court for that day. She's saying, this person I like was watching back home, me on TV. I mean, that has to do with nothing with her testimony, so I don't think that puts anything in jeopardy for the defense directly. But could she have posted anything more? Could she have posted another TikTok earlier that day, later on that evening as well too, that was more specific to her testimony, and she deleted it? Or is this the only TikTok that she did? She said she posted 3. I don't think she said all 3 in that same day. So this was directly after her testimony. This is from the following day, so yesterday.
Day 3. Feeling good. Got our coffee. Fit check.
Fit check, she says, as the kids say, for her outfit.
Fit check. Margaret, fit check. Fit check. Catch me. Catch me. Yeah. Yeah. We're walking to the courthouse, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but here we are. Yeah. Keep you posted. Love you.
So, just a young girl being like, hey, this is my outfit. This is what I was wearing to court. I'll keep you all posted. What she'll keep them posted on about, I don't know, because she's not allowed to talk about it. But that seems pretty harmless to me as well.
Remember how I told y'all that I was nervous about my crush watching me on live TV? Well, I literally told y'all, no, but in all seriousness, I cannot talk a lot about the trial right now. I will when I am allowed to. But a lot of people have been asking me about my jewelry, especially specifically this necklace. I think I wear it a lot because it's my favorite necklace of all time. But it's D Ruel on. I'll tag her in the caption on Instagram, TikTok. She's a jewelry. Oh my gosh, my brain is actually fried from today and yesterday and the day before. I'm exhausted. But she's a jeweler based out of Charleston. All of her jewelry is amazing and beautiful and gorgeous, and I love it. And this is one of a kind, custom made, so she cannot make another one. She made the choker and all of the charms except for this one. This one is from a different jeweler in Charleston. But yeah, if you go on her website and you go on her Instagram and her TikTok, you can see all the other jewelry she makes. She made this pearl chain earring for me, and I have a few other pieces of jewelry from her. I'm constantly getting jewelry from her because my art studio is in the back of her shop in Charleston. So if you're in Charleston, go check her out. But yeah, and then my other jewelry, this is my Oura ring, some bangles, and some permanent bracelets, and then I have this. It's like a Cuban link, but it's a hand holding that, and then these two rings. This whole hand is from Gold Bug in Charleston as well. But yeah, I can't really talk about the trial, even though I am dying to talk about it with y'all. Every time I leave the courtroom, I turn my phone on and I scroll on TikTok and I see everybody's comments, and it just makes me so happy. But yeah, now it's time to go figure out me and Margaret what we're going to wear into the courtroom, because that has been the most exciting part of our morning, every single morning this week. Remember how I told y'all that I was...
So I don't think necessarily what she said in the TikTok was bad in that video. But her scrolling through the comment section, I don't know. Maybe that could have been problematic if people are talking about some of the testimony that was discussed in that case. That could be held against her later on. They could end up removing her as a rebuttal witness, which is essentially all the defense wants to do. They don't want to say, they don't want to get her in trouble. They just want to remove her as a potential rebuttal witness for the state for later testimony when the defense is ready to present their case. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think that could be potentially problematic for Eva. That's all we have in terms of her TikTok content from what I could tell. There was no, if there are other videos and she deleted them, if you guys have them, let me know. Please send them my way. But that is all she has currently up to date on her TikTok. I have not seen the interview from the reporter. If it exists, if any of you have seen it, again, please email me, Alexa's roommate with 1M at gmail.com. Link is in the description if you want to copy and paste that and shoot it over to me. Happy to take a look at it and present it in this next video. But that's all we have in regards to that. But I thought it would be interesting to fast forward into the future of today since this happened over the last 48 hours after Eva testified. And we're already gearing up to rest the state's case today in real time. So we still have plenty to catch up on. Let's go back and rewind to day one and move to our next witness that I want to go through, which is the neighbor. John Sant, who was the neighbor of Alicia Byers, which is Ashley Benefield's mother. When Ashley Benefield was living with Alicia. So let's use the long crime one since it was less glitchy, and whatever happens, happens. But again, if you guys want to make a donation to this channel, again, you can do so via one of the links below. To continue to support the growth of this channel. And if you leave me a message, I will read it at the beginning of every video, because without this community, I cannot do these videos. All right, let's get into what John Sant has to say. Again, this is the neighbor's testimony. And then we just have a little bit more testimony to go through for day one. I want to go through the crime scene tech, the second one specifically. Who took the photos of Ashley, took photos inside the house. We also get into a little bit of chain of custody, which is interesting to hear about considering the lack thereof in the Karen Reed case. So it's always interesting covering these trials and kind of seeing the difference between state to state, but also court to court.
News.
He's an older gentleman.
Yes, sir. I think. Okay. Sorry. And the deputy will show you how to adjust it. Oh, did I scare you? Too loud? Okay. Sorry about that.
So you can see, like, I mean, that's one of the only moments where we see Ashley actually smiling, which feels genuine to me because it just goes to show. And we'll see this a little bit through Alicia Byers' testimony in day two, when she talks about, when she's asked if her and John Sant go to the range together to fire off firearms. So it seems like there is somewhat of a close relationship. He's a next door neighbor, probably good friends with her mother, probably known her for years. So.
This is volume control.
Okay.
Make sure to keep the phone.
All right. All right, sir. Does that help?
Yes, sir.
All right.
That's
I
fine.
apologize about that. I didn't mean to.
No, that's all right. It's okay.
Sir, my name is Judge White. I'm presiding over this case. Just make yourself comfortable in that seat.
It's a very warm, genuine smile, in my opinion. So just goes to show the kind of relationship she probably had with him.
Just speaking
Good afternoon.
Hi,
Please state your name.
John William Sant Jr.,
How do you spell Sant?
S-A-N-T,
Where do you live?
in 11327 White Rock Terrace in Bradenton.
And did you live next door to Ashley Benefield and her mother, Alicia Byers?
I did.
Do you still live at that same address?
I do.
Do they still live at the same address?
No,
Okay. Did Ashley have a child when you lived next to each other?
she did.
About how old was the child last time you were together?
At the house, in the neighborhood,
When they were living in the neighborhood?
I'd say 18 months to 2 years.
Okay. And do you remember a day when Ashley came to your house?
Yes,
Okay. Do you remember what day of the week that was?
it was on a Sunday.
And what time of day was it? Light out, dark out?
It was still light, but it was probably early evening. It was between football games.
Okay, so it was between the football games on a Sunday?
Right.
All right. Still light out? What do you remember about Ashley coming over?
From the very beginning.
Right.
Well, I heard a very loud pounding on my door. And kind of startled me, but it was loud. And I went and I looked out through the little window in the window, and there wasn't anyone there. So I thought, well, went to the back and looked out the back. I even looked out the side and didn't see anybody. And I was thinking, well, one of my grandkids has a friend in that area there, and I thought they might be messing around, but I didn't see anything. So I guess it was a few minutes. I just, nobody, must be just someone screwing around. And it happened again.
The pounding.
The pounding happened again, yeah.
I'm having a little trouble here.
All right. Yeah, if we can get you scoot up a little bit. There you go.
Sorry. What part do you want me to start at again?
Okay, so the pounding started again.
The pounding started for the second time, yes.
Okay, and what did you do then?
At that point, now I'm starting to get a little concerned. Someone's trying to either break in or a home invasion and that. So I went back into my room, went into my closet, and I pulled my weapon out.
Okay, and you say weapon, what kind of weapon was that?
It was a Glock 23 40 cal.
Okay, so you had your own firearm.
Yes, ma'am.
You pulled that out, and what did you do?
I then came from the closet back towards the door and decided at that point, let's look out the door one more time before I load one in and take it to the door. So I just set it down on the little table beside my chair.
So you set the gun down?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I left, and then I went back to the door.
What did you?
And I looked out again, and then that's when I saw I saw a leg sticking out. Someone was sitting on the stoop.
Okay, so you saw a leg. You think someone was sitting?
Well, they were sitting.
Okay, so what'd you do?
Well, then I kind of noticed who the leg belonged to, or I thought I did. And I went and I opened the door.
And did you know who it was when you saw the person?
I assumed who it was when I looked out the window.
When you opened the door, could you see who it was?
Well, by the time I got the door open, she was standing up.
So you saw who it was?
Yes.
And who was it?
It was Ashley.
Okay. And you kind of pointed over that direction. You see her in the room today?
She's over next to Mr. Taylor, yeah.
Stipulate that it's Miss Benefield, Your Honor.
Stipulation to ID.
Yes.
Okay. And what did Ashley say when you opened the door?
As soon as I opened the door, before I could say anything, she said, he attacked me.
And is that all she said?
At that point, I said, who? He said, Doug. He attacked me, and I shot him.
Okay. Is that all she said to you?
That's all she said.
Did she have a weapon with her?
I didn't see it at that point.
Did you see a weapon eventually?
Eventually,
Where was that weapon?
it was laying down just to the right of my door where I couldn't see it, where I was standing at that point.
So Ashley pounds on the door twice. He looks out. He thinks like, oh my God, there must be a home invasion or something because he couldn't see her at first. Then he looks out the window one more time after retrieving his own firearm. Looks out, notices that, oh, it's Ashley, my neighbor. Opens the door. She's standing up. The firearm that she used to fatally end Doug Benefield's life is somewhere out of sight, so she's not currently holding it. And she says he attacks her. He attacked her. Doug Benefield attacked her, and I used my firearm on him. Okay.
And when did you see that weapon?
Well, after she said, and I shot him, I said, well, then you better come in. And I moved to the left to let her in, and that's when I noticed it lying there on the ground.
Okay. And what was it?
It was a handgun.
What did you do with that handgun?
Once I got her in the house, I told her, I said, I can't leave that out there. No, I don't know whether she responded or not, but then I went out, reached down, picked it up by the trigger guard, brought it back in the house, and set it down inside the door.
Okay. And when you say inside the door, was that on the floor or was there a table?
It's on the floor.
On the floor. So once you brought her into the house, where did you go?
once I brought the weapon in, I shut the door and locked it. And I looked at her and I said, what condition is Doug in? And she said, I don't know. Or she said, don't know. She just don't know. I said, where's your mother in Emerson? And she said, at the park.
That's her daughter.
So you knew her mother and you knew Emerson, her daughter?
Yes,
Okay. And she said at the park?
at the park.
And at some point during this conversation, when she was at your house, did she tell you that that gun was hers?
After listening to the tapes, I was able to hear her say it, but it was really faint, yeah.
Okay. Did you call 911?
I did
Have you listened to the 911 call?
many times.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 1. You can take a look at this. What is this?
I don't know, it's a disc, I guess.
It's a
Oh,
disc.
okay, yeah.
It's
The
a
911
disc.
call.
Oh, okay.
And when you listened
I
to
don't
this
know.
911 call, was it an accurate representation of your conversation with the person on the other line? Do you
Yeah.
remember?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a great question by the state, and I'm glad that they confirmed that because of all the lack thereof confirming in the Karen Reed case, where inverted videos just came into evidence in the middle of the trial, came into discovery. I mean, I like that the state asked this question to confirm, like, is this an accurate depiction of the same 911 recording that you've heard numerous times and that you made that day? So I like that the state asked that question. So we're going to gear up into listening to the 911 call. Again, trigger warning, if you are a survivor of DV and you need to step away, you need to watch something happy that, again, doesn't make you feel upset and you need to take care of yourself, please do that. Please don't, do anything that is going to put you or your own mental health in an emotional state. I want to make sure that you are safe and that you know that this community is safe and that we care about our channel viewers. So if this is an upsetting topic, please don't listen to it. If it's going to be triggering for you, trigger warning. And I'll see you in the next video or later on. I'm going to timestamp everything. So if you want to jump ahead, you'll be able to do that too. So now we're going to get into the 911 call. Then we'll get into a little bit of cross. And then we will get into our final witness that we're going to be recapping for today in this video. And then we'll gear up for day 2. I got a lot of day 3 to catch up on too, but tomorrow will be day 2 of this trial recap.
It wasn't me.
Pardon?
She
Please move.
was crying, but someone
Have it back.
Or receive to the jury. To you. Be of time as you need. Members of court that would edit it way they recorded and be you to the reference you for you.
address is
County 911. Thank you.
Manatee County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
hi. My address is 11327 White Rock Terrace.
Okay, can you repeat that for me to make sure I have it correctly?
The house next door, honey. What's your address? Okay, it's right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him. Now we've not gone over there yet.
Okay, what's his name?
So that's consistent with this testimony. I'm going to do my best too to like break this up. One, because of, it's pretty triggering, but to give you some context of the 911 call. And if you want to listen to it without my commentary, I will link to that video as well below from the Long Crime Trials channel. But also too, I'm trying to make sure that Long Crime doesn't strike this video so you guys can actually watch it.
Who?
What is his name?
His name is Doug Benefield.
Okay.
I have not gone over there. I'm not
Okay, I
ready to
don't-
go back.
I don't want you to go over there. Stay on the line.
So 911 operator says, I don't want you to go over there. Just stay put where you are right now. in the event that this man is potentially dangerous. If he is armed, we don't know. They are treating it seems like right off the bat, like a DV case, which is interesting because whereas with the Karen Reed case, they were very quick to rule rule out any other potential way that John O'Keefe could have sustained those injuries.
Just one moment. I'm going to connect you over to Sheriff's Dispatch, okay?
Okay,
One moment.
calm down, honey, calm down.
What is your name, sir?
My name's John Sant, KMT. I live next to
Office Dispatch on a recorded line. This is Gabby. How can I help you? Hey, Gabby, it's Karen. On the 11327, I have John Singer on the phone. He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband. Okay. All right, I'm going to get that on the screen, okay?
I think for pretty much the entirety of this entire 911 call too, that they have my cat wants to join me. Hey guys, my cat wants to join me because this is her chair. You can't even see her right now, but she's literally climbing on top of me. Munchie, you want to say hi? No, she didn't want to say hi. Munchie doesn't want to say hi, but she's gonna be on my lap now. But the camera is gonna focus pretty much exclusively on Ashley during this 911 call. They will pan from time to time to John Stanton. He even seems to be shedding a few tears at some point. Looks like, this was a very traumatic day for everybody involved. And if you are to believe that Ashley is telling the truth, or if she is, in fact, making this up, I mean, what do you think of that? Do you think this is a genuine response? Do you think she's pretending? Do you think she's just trying to manipulate the jury? I mean, for me, it seems genuine, especially that genuine reaction to you earlier when she saw John Sant come onto the stand, that smile. It feels genuine to me, but that's just my own opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. But I mean, I can't imagine if this is true, if she did in fact suffer years of DV at the hands of Doug Benefield and then protected herself, and this is how the series of events, according to Ashley, went down. I can only imagine how traumatizing it is to listen to this. And did she get a chance to listen to it again? Is this her first time re-listening to it in a long time? Did she listen to this 911 call during the Stand Your Ground hearing? I can only imagine. I didn't tune into to that full 2-day hearing. If any of you guys did, let me know. How was her demeanor then? I would be curious to know.
Okay. Which screen is her at? 11327 White Rock Terrace. Okay.
That's my address.
That's your address? What's her address? Where does it occur at?
Her address is right next to, I believe it's 11331.
She's on the corner? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, on the corner. She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here.
Yeah.
You want me to go over and look at anything, or just wait for the police?
No, I want you to just wait for the police, okay?
All right, if you could just get them here quick. She came in, she was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her, and she shot him.
It's consistent with this story.
I'm just getting that all on the screen, okay?
Okay. I know, honey. Come on. I know. Go ahead, ma'am.
Where is the gun? Is it with her, or is it just...
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor inside the door. My door's locked, so in case he isn't, he can't get up. I'm also armed if he does come over and try to harm her, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
So that's interesting because he seems like he's taking her seriously. Like he's not questioning, like, I don't know what happened. She says this. He's like, she said he attacked her, and I'm ready to go. If this guy is gonna come over here and try to retaliate, like I'm good to go. I will protect us. I'm letting you know, like we're good to go. So it seems like he had no reason to doubt her in this moment. I don't know how well he knew Doug. Maybe not that well, but it seems like he's taking Ashley pretty seriously right from the jump. And it seems like the 911 operator as well too. So and the police initially as well.
I'm kind of concerned with her mother and the little girl might get back there and find this whatever happened.
And he's concerned
Don't go
about the mother and the daughter.
Come on. I know. Come on, honey, sit down. Sit down. I know.
Yeah. All right, I just want you guys to stay on the phone with me, okay?
Yeah, I'm right here with you. I'm just with her. I'm trying to comfort her. We're in the house. Well, the police are going to want to know, probably. I know, baby. You got to sit down. Come on. Come on. There's no... Well, honey, they want you to stay here. If he isn't, we can't take a chance. That's why I want them to hurry up before we get back from the park.
Deputies are moving as fast as their hand. They're coming priority. They're coming lights and sirens. They just want to get and make sure that everything's okay. I want to, so where in the house is he?
Where in the house is he?
My bedroom.
Her bedroom. No, I don't know where that is. So it's one of the bedrooms. It's a lot like mine, so I'm going to assume when you go into is the garage door open? When you go into the garage, it's going to be on the left? Yeah. On the left.
Okay.
So he's in her bedroom. This goes on for a few more minutes. I'm not going to play the entire 911 clip, one, because it's extremely triggering, and two, because it gets to the point where they're just like asking, like, hey, I don't see the police officers here. Are they even at the right address? There's a lot of that. The police ultimately arrive. It seems like they arrive with multiple police officers, so they who are armed and ready in case something goes down. So it's nice to know that they're taking this seriously, at least initially, from what I can gather from this 911 call. And what happens next with the investigation, we'll see. But that was the 911 call. I want to get a little bit more into his testimony, because I want to go a little bit back into his testimony and just him recalling the series of events from that day. 911 call. Okay, so now we're gonna pick it up from after the 911 call, and then we'll get into our final witness.
I know it's not.
And eventually, did the police come to your house?
And talk to me?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And did they recover that firearm that she had brought over that you left?
They did it while I was outside, because when I went back in, it was gone.
Okay.
I assume they took it.
Okay. So maybe you didn't see them take it, but
No.
it was gone.
No.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. The defense may have some questions for you.
So they retrieved the firearm. He had the firearm. She was no longer holding the firearm when the police arrived.
Okay.
Cross.
Afternoon, Mr. Sant.
Afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you for coming this afternoon. With court's permission, may I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Sant, I've passed you a photograph. I'm going to mark it for identification as fence exhibit number 1, if I can.
And Mr. Sant?
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to keep startling you. I apologize.
That's okay.
Can I please have that transcript? No, the transcript. Thank you, sir.
There you go. Okay.
Definitely a likable and very credible witness, I would say. Does he help the defense more than the prosecution, or does he help the prosecution more?
Mr. Sant, can you identify that?
Well, it looks like my house and Alicia's house at the time.
Yes, sir. And they lived in the house right next door to you, I believe you said.
The one with the red dot on it.
Yes. It was the corner house,
Yeah,
correct?
right,
And it's got a red dot on it?
right.
All right. Is it an accurate representation of your house in comparison and in position to where Ms. Benefield lived?
Yeah.
Would you do me the favor, may I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Would you put a check mark on the roof of your house?
My house.
Yes.
All right.
Your house that's depicted in that picture. Okay, we're going to help the jury see how this took place. Put it on the overhead. Put it on the overhead. Can you put it on the overhead?
Absolutely. Madam Clerk, can you give him some more for us? Just the jury and the presentation. Is this just a demonstrative aid?
Yes, sir.
He's going to
Okay,
pull it
so,
up on the big
Mr.
screen.
Sapp, just if I may turn your attention, if you could.
This one or this?
Actually, I think maybe you'll be able to see it better on this one. The chair should swing around.
Okay.
You see the one with the red dot on it? That's Ashley's house,
Yes,
and your house is immediately to the left, correct?
yes.
All right. Thank you.
Don't move that mouse.
I'd like to move that into evidence, Your Honor, as defense exhibit number 1 at this point.
Okay. I just asked a minute ago if it was a demonstrative aid or if you were admitting it.
Well, it wasn't until Mr.
So
Sand.
okay, admit things first if you want. Any objection?
And Judge, I recognize it's the state's case, but I have no objection to this.
All right, received.
Mr. Sand, you've told us that on this terrible occasion, Ashley was terrified.
Yes.
I think you said, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think you said she was stuttering and shaking.
Yes.
Pretty hysterical.
Yeah. Yes.
Couldn't
All
sit
right, now-
down.
Mr. Sant, you're pretty familiar with firearms, are you?
Somewhat. I use them. I go to firing ranges. I'm no
This
expert.
is
but
interesting, by the way.
Was there anything,
This is very interesting testimony that he gets to, which I feel like this is probably one of the best witnesses for the defense, probably the strongest cross examination of the day, of day one, in terms of just having an understanding of what Ashley's demeanor was like that day, or what it presented to be, what the firearm looked like. I don't know if they have plans to call a firearm expert on the defense's list. I would think that they would, because they would be able to testify to this a little bit better than just a GUN user. But still, nevertheless, I think this is really interesting and important testimony, especially coming from somebody who, like probably many of the people on the jury, also who have firearms.
about that firearm on that day that you noticed that was unusual?
First thing I noticed is when I saw it, there was a spent cartridge stuck between the slide and the entrance to the chamber.
A spent cartridge, meaning a fired cartridge?
I'm sorry. Yes, it was empty.
Okay, and it was stuck where?
It was stuck with the front end of the slide and the back end of the chamber entrance.
The slide on the gun that
Right.
cocks it and loads another bullet into the chamber?
Correct.
So could we agree that the weapon was jammed?
The weapon had been misfired or mishandled. It
Okay.
wasn't held in the
The weapon, now again, he's not a firearm expert, but he is a frequent firearm user, somebody who goes to the range regularly, etc. That it appeared like the weapon was mishandled or misfired, which is interesting because that goes into the state. This is where I feel like it's a little problematic for the state, because if the state is trying to prove intent and that she was gearing up for this, and she was, she sent her mom and her daughter away so she could commit this act against Doug and fatally end his life, wouldn't and they're trying to say that Ashley is somebody who's well versed in firearms, and even if she is, if you're under a moment of distress, you lack the confidence to handle a firearm properly, no matter how many years of experience you may have, which could go two ways. I mean, you could still be under distress if you are intending to do something, right? And that might mean that you make mistakes, even if you're more mentally prepared for it, but you're definitely not going to be confident in that situation. But I feel like it helps the defense's case a little bit more, because it goes to show her state of being in panic and maybe in fear. And she runs. And it just, for me, it helps the defense more than the prosecution, because if they're trying to say she's well versed in this and she fully intended on doing that, wouldn't she have a more confident demeanor if she was planning on doing this purposely to end Doug's life? I don't know. That's just what I think. Those are just my opinions. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But I feel like it supports the defense's theory more of, she could have been mishandling it, hence why it wasn't a straight on, shot at Doug, and why it was I think can't remember how many rounds they said that she had ended up firing, but I believe it was something to the effect of 9 or so. And the 2 that hit him on his sides, not any that hit him directly straight on. So if she was going to the range, which I'll get into with Alicia Byers' testimony tomorrow, her mother, about going to the range with John Sant and preparing for this, wouldn't you think that she'd be a little bit more laser sharp with her target? Don't you think she'd be a little bit? I don't know. I feel like it could go both ways. But I feel like it goes more in favor with the defense's theory of if she is in a panicked state, then yeah, she might not, even if she has years of experience handling a firearm in that moment of distress and not intending to use it with deadly force to protect herself, which might have been the first time for her that she's ever had to do that. It can be a distressful situation, and it does coincide with a firearm that might look like that it could have jammed, it could have been mishandled, misfired, etc., just like he is testifying to here.
It didn't eject it far enough.
Now, what is that indicative of, that a cartridge would be stuck like that?
Objection foundation.
I'm going to sustain.
Mr. Sant, do you have experience to the extent of being familiar with weapons and what would cause a cartridge to get stuck in the manner that it was on this gun on that day?
Yes.
May I, Your Honor?
You want to be heard?
No.
Go ahead.
Thank you. What is that indicative of, Mr. Sant?
In my experience, was the weapon wasn't held properly when that particular cartridge was fired.
And when you say by held properly, meaning held too loosely?
Yes.
No further questions.
Very damning.
Can this witness be released?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Sant.
Yes.
You are released from your subpoena. You are free to go. Yes, sir. No, you can't take those. They wouldn't work outside anyway. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Such a likable witness, very credible in my opinion. I don't know if I would have necessarily used him as a GUN expert. Hopefully they will call a firearm expert, even just to ask them a couple of questions of like, yeah, is this possible? I don't know who's on their witness list, but really probably the strongest testimony of the day in regards to the defense's case. So now I want to get to the crime scene tech. So this is the second crime scene tech that was called. She was the one who ultimately, I believe, took pictures of Ashley. And then we'll round things out, do a quick summary, and call it a dia for this video.
And this door, what is the door in the middle of this picture?
That's the front door.
And then state 69, what do we see here?
So I continued outside because there was more blood outside. So that is right in the front entrance outside the front door. So it would be right in this area. So that's 17 and 18 with blood.
Thank you. And when you said this area, you pointed, but I didn't see. Would you mind?
Right in this area.
Thank you. Did you locate any other projectiles in the home?
I did.
And where was it? Where was it? One or more?
It's one more, just one more.
And where was it?
It's in the living room.
And did you document that with photos?
I did.
I'm going to show you state 70. What do we see here? And if you could just show us on that sketch where we're looking.
So this is in the living room and it's right by the front door. So this is the front door. So it's right here in this area. So there's the window. So it's right there.
Thank you. And what is this item in state 71, if you know?
It's that it's some kind of shelving.
And what are you documenting in this photo?
The path that the projectile took.
And can you just point to the jury what you used? Once you
Once I can be
else in this case. And what were you asked to? Did you do that?
I did.
And where did that take?
October 1st.
And what were you asked to do?
To photograph Ashley Benefield for
else. Other than after what we've just gone through from September 27th, were you later asked to do something else in this?
So what the prosecution is going to ask here is if you recall from, I think, my video yesterday, the crime scene text, because bruises don't always appear immediately after somebody is injured via whatever kind of force, that this crime scene tech, Amanda Conlon, was instructed to go back a few days later, take some photos of Ashley to see if any bruises had surfaced based on the allegations that she had made against Doug.
Case.
Yes.
And when was that?
That was on October 1st.
And what were you asked to do?
To photograph Ashley Benefield.
And did you do that?
I did.
And where did that take place?
In our CID.
And I'm going to show you states 83, 84, 85. these today. Do you recognize them?
So I want to give a little bit of a trigger warning here because this, I believe they're gonna show what the photos of Ashley that the crime scene tech took those days later. So again, if you are a DV survivor or this is just upsetting for you to view as a viewer, I totally understand, and I will not take any offense to it. And I will see you in the next video.
Yes,
And how do you recognize them?
they're the photos I took of Ashley.
And do they appear, or do they fairly and accurately depict how she appeared to you back in October 1st, 2020?
Yes,
Your Honor, at this time, state would ask to enter and publish 83, 84, and 85.
No objection. Received.
And what was the purpose of taking pictures of her?
so this was after the night that everything occurred, and I know Megan took pictures of her that night, but sometimes bruising does not show up for a couple days, so that was why I went back to take pictures of her.
And did you observe any injuries on her body?
There were scratches. Yes,
I'm going to show you states 83. What's the purpose of this photo?
it's just to show who I'm taking a picture of.
And did you observe any injuries to Ms. Benefield's face or neck?
I did not.
And then states 84.
So that's the scratches.
And just for orientation purposes, that's the right side of her body.
Yes,
Thank you. And states 85.
the scratch in her back.
And for orientation purposes, what side of her body would that be?
Actually, I'm sorry, it's not her back. It's see this real quick? I believe it's right under her bra line.
It's been cropped quite down.
Yeah. So it's the right side of her body.
Thank you. And were you asked to conduct any
So no bruising, no scratch. Like aside from those two little scratch marks, as well too. And this is a few days later. I think they said sometime in October when this event occurred. It was the 27th of September. So ample time for any bruises to potentially show. But I don't know if necessarily. I mean, from what we gather, what we heard in the 911 call, there was no specifying of what being attacked by somebody meant. So again, a little bit vague. It's not like she said, "Oh, he punched me," or "Oh, he kicked me," or "Oh, he did this." Something that would instinctually cause a bruise to develop days later. And again, just because you haven't been physically touched by that person, if you are in fear for your personal safety, you can use, according to the stand your ground law, to my understanding, you can use deadly force if you feel threatened in any way. So him attacking her could mean, him coming after her, right? So it's important to choose your words carefully, but in that moment of hysteria, I that's probably the quickest way to get it. He was attacking me, like he's coming after me. So that could be, that would. I don't know if the relevance of bruising being there or being not there necessarily matters in this regard, because again, if you're being threatened in any way, if you feel like your life is being threatened, regardless of whether he put hands on you or not, it does that really matter if there are bruises on her days later?
further investigation in this case?
No.
Your Honor, may I have just a moment with the counsel? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Conlon. I don't have any other questions.
Okay. So no more questions for the prosecution. Sorry, I'm like trying to navigate my chair because my cat is literally taking up. Yeah, you are. You're taking up my entire chair right now because it's her chair. So she's pushing me out of my chair. So now we're going to skip ahead to the defense's cross examination of this witness.
I'd like to just take a moment, Your Honor, and look through the pictures.
She's going through the photos.
Would you like me to leave that on, or would you like me to get that out of your way?
Could actually introduce. You took more pictures on that day than were actually introduced here this afternoon.
Correct.
All right. Let me pass this one to you and see if it's one of the photographs that you took. Yeah, you want?
Yes, of course.
Yes, I did take this photograph.
Okay. State chose not to offer that to you, so I'd like you to identify it for us.
It is Ashley. I'm assuming it's her maiden name, buyers. It is her, and it's her concealed weapons firearm license.
Okay. And is it an accurate reproduction, just like all the other photographs that you took on that day?
Yes.
You move respectfully, Your Honor, and introduce it as defense exhibit number 2.
Any objection?
No, I recognize the statement.
Thank you. Received.
I want,
I'm sorry, has that already been marked?
yes, sir.
Okay.
We pre-marked them.
Don't you love? Wait,
all of them.
Thank you.
he pre-marks all of them. They pre-mark all of them. Bev, get that? That's what the defense was trying to freaking do. That's what both attorneys were trying to do before your show of a freaking circus courtroom for the Karen Reed trial. That slowed everything up because you had to have Madam Court Reporter mark every single thing that was getting entered into evidence. You get the attorneys to pre-mark stuff so that you can keep things moving and you don't have to stop every 5 seconds to have somebody mark it into evidence.
Ms. Conlon, I want to just concentrate for a moment on the cell phone that you said that was on the couch that you recovered.
Yes.
Let me just try to refresh your recollection as to whether or not that cell phone, rather than being on the couch, was in the couch.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was originally in the couch and then it was removed and put on top to take the photograph.
The crime scene photographs that you took, I want to make sure we understand. You went in there and took these photographs and processed it after the deputies and EMS were in there.
Correct.
So what your photographs tell us, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's the way the scene appeared at the time you took the photograph.
Correct.
It's not necessarily the way the scene was prior to the time you snapped your photograph.
Correct.
So in other words, the broom, just as an example, that was in one of the photographs, that broom may very well have been knocked aside when the deputies were working on Mr. Benefield, trying to assist him.
Yes, that's possible.
And that could apply to the shell casings as well when the EMS people dragged Mr. Benefield out of the bedroom.
Correct.
You would have no way of knowing.
Correct.
All your photographs tell us is how things looked when you took the photograph.
Correct.
Which is really interesting because it's like she wasn't the first one on the scene. So the way that she's documenting everything when she got clearance to go ahead and start taking pictures and documenting all of this evidence is the way that it was when she got there. Okay. So things could have been manipulated because obviously they were trying to, I believe at least, that they were trying to resuscitate Douglas Benefield when they got there. They were trying to revive him and do work on him. They dragged him out. So already the crime scene is slightly compromised just based on that factor. Things could have been shifted around, not exactly as they were before anybody entered the crime scene. In an effort to, the first priority is to save a man's life.
The blood marks from the bedroom all the way out to the front door, once again, is the scene after the EMS went through there along with the deputies.
Correct.
The last thing I want to ask you is, you did, to my knowledge, 2 separate reports. Is that correct?
I believe it was one. If you would show me what you're looking at.
Sure. May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
So these are my property receipts.
Yes, okay.
So that would be separate from the original written report.
Okay, but these are reports that you did.
Correct. Yes.
And one of them, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, is it Deputy Conlon or
No, I'm a civilian.
crime scene?
Yes, crime scene.
Or Ms. Conlon?
Yes. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the dates of the report is on the day of the incident, 9/27/20.
Correct.
Okay, and the second one is on October 12th of 2020.
Yes.
And on both of these reports, Ms. Conlon, you, under type of case, noted as a homicide.
Correct.
When you're photographing this scene and executing your duties, all you know is that somebody died as a result of what happened there.
Correct.
You don't know whether or not it was a crime.
I do not know.
That's why you call it a homicide.
Correct.
If you knew it was a crime, you'd call it a murder.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Hey.
Redirect?
How she documented things in her report were according to, again, and I think this is what makes the last few witnesses extremely credible, is that they're just saying it, they're factually just saying exactly what it is. Yes, I did this. No, I did not do this. So I really like this witness a lot. I know she had a pretty long, hefty testimony, just laying the foundation of the evidence that was collected that's necessary for the case, not necessarily for us to recap because it's a little long and drawn out. But that was a nice little recap by the defense and just saying, okay, so you did this. Cool. Okay. Was it possible that the evidence that you essentially tagged and bagged and took pictures of once you got there could have been slightly out of place from how they were originally found in. Yes, okay, cool. So I really like this witness for that, and her ultimately saying too that the reports that she filed out and how it was filed as a homicide versus a murder, because at the time she didn't know that's not her job. It's not her job to rule something as the cause or manner of death, or speak on behalf of that. It's just her job to show up, take pictures, bag and tag stuff. So really credible witness. Now we're going into redirect.
I don't have anything else, Judge. Thank you.
No? All right. Hold on one second. Can she be released? Can she be released from her subpoena?
No, we'd like to keep her under subpoena.
All right, that's fine. If you're not releasing her-
So actually, no redirect on this witness, but she is still under subpoena, just like many other witnesses that were testifying earlier today and earlier this day on day 1, as well on day 2. I'm still catching up on day 3, but my God, what a lengthy video. That's why I wanted to break it up, because there was a lot of testimony to sift through, even a lot to going through Tommie Benefield's court TV interview, Eva Benefield's hearing that took place earlier today about her potentially violating her sequestered subpoena. So there was a lot to unpack there, but let me know what you guys think about day 1. Do you think that the prosecution is laying a really strong foundation for this case and proving intent? I mean, after day 1, it's really hard to tell, just because you're really laying the groundwork for setting the story, the narrative of what you're trying to prove your case to. But I think a lot of the evidence and testimony that came out definitely supported, I feel like, a little bit more of the defense's arguments, especially with the 911 call. But again, if John Sant is the neighbor of Ashley Benefield, you could even say he's a little bit biased. Maybe he had it seems like he had a pretty good relationship with her. She felt comfortable enough to go over to his house, knock on his door, seek help after this event took place. We haven't heard from Ashley yet, so that's why I encourage you guys to keep an open mind about, regardless of what you've heard in the media before or after. I'm trying to keep an open mind. I know that it seems like I'm showing my bias a little bit by leaning towards one way, and that's just because of what's been presented in front of me. Yes, I have my own experiences that seem relatable, and I hope that it opens the discussion for everybody in this community to talk and chat in an open and respectful way, sharing their experiences, their viewpoints as well too, because there are a lot of DV survivors who feel like Ashley is trying to manipulate the situation. She isn't really a DV survivor, or if she is, that she's just manipulating the situation. So I don't know. I'm trying to keep as much of an open mind, but up until this point, I do believe that Ashley didn't intend to fatally end Doug's life. I feel like in that moment, it's very possible that the series of events that the defense laid out in opening statements could have in fact been true, especially with the crime scene tech. Now, the thing that I feel like the prosecution definitely is winning with, in terms of just the crime scene tech following up with the pictures of Ashley after the fact, those scratch marks. Those were the first time that we saw those scratch marks, where the defense was saying that Doug body checked her and it jammed a cardboard box into her. Would that have left a little bit more bruising? I mean, we don't know what the contents of that alleged cardboard box could have been holding, if it was holding something heavy. Would there have been bruising, a little bit more scratching, a little bit more of an injury? I mean, as you know, Ashley is a very tiny person, so I feel like it wouldn't take much to probably cause some kind of physical scarring or bruising, etc. But again, I don't know. Is it possible? Is it possible that it could have been a cat or just a random? I mean, I wake up with random scratches on my body all the time, so I don't know. It's really hard to say at this point, but it's a really fascinating case nonetheless. And I appreciate you guys being on this journey with me. And If you found today's video interesting, if you liked today's video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you never miss another notification from me. And make sure you hit that like button. Most importantly, it's free to do, takes 3 seconds, and it teaches the YouTube algorithm that this is newsworthy news. And I think this is a really important story to share out, especially if you are a DV survivor. Sharing these stories and just making sure we're reaching as many people as possible to tune in. So again, if you want to make a donation, there's a bunch of options that you can choose from at the link below. And I always appreciate your support. And if you do make a donation, I will read your message in the beginning of every video. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you for day 2's recap, which gets super spicy AF if you thought today's testimony was spicy. Okay, I'll see you then.